Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 261. I shall give up on the heavens, but not on my beloved. Ye Gu Han's sword had shot out and pierced the armpit of the black-clothed man whose sword had pierced his lower abdomen. The black-clad man exerted himself to draw his sword out of Ye Gu Han's body. But it did not budge. Ye Gu Han was actually using his own muscles to jam that person's long sword. This was a real fight. The blood-red sword in that assailant's armpit had started to move upwards within this short pause. The black-clothed assailant was scared out of his wits at this. He then made a prompt decision to abandon his sword in Ye Gu Han's abdomen. He dodged and prevented his entire body from a miserable death of getting slashed into two. Unfortunately, it was already late. His arm didn't receive the luxury of that narrow escape. The blooded sword went forth and separated the arm from his body, and the half of his shoulder. The sword went a little further and peeled off the layers of his skin all the way up to his facial muscles. What was left behind was terrifying to behold. His white bones were bared. His twisting worm-like veins could be seen very clearly, along with the wisps of blood that flowed inside them. This person screamed a blood-curdling cry as he retreated. It sounded more beast than human. His eyes were exposing the shock that had been bestowed upon his conscience. My hand. My face. Ah! However, Ye Gu Han recovered his sword at an incredible speed. He then quickly took advantage of that moment and stabbed again. It was lightning fast. Ye Gu Han's actions, his lack of hesitation in getting hit by the enemy, it had all been for this one moment. This one blow. Ye Gu Han knew that his strength wouldn't hold out in a drawn-out battle. He knew that he wouldn't be able to face the combined strength of these 5 Sky Xian assailants. Therefore, all he could was fight with everything he had. However, Ye Gu Han was a very experienced fighter. Anyone could tell that all 5 of them were Sky Xian experts. But he could clearly sense that the Xian Qi of 2 of his enemies was unstable. He could sense that they had sustained serious injuries in the past and hadn't healed yet. He himself was now a spent force. So, the most he could do was take the 2 of them down with him. However, the remaining 3 attackers were in good condition. Therefore, he couldn't be as sure about dealing with them. Therefore, those 2 injured enemies were his primary targets. In fact, they were his only targets. Ye Gu Han's sword stabbed him repeatedly. But the palms of one of the enemies hit his chest. He was happy that he had dealt such a blow to the enemy, but hadn't expected that his own ribs would be shattered. However, his chest now resembled a whirlpool as it sucked in the enemy's palms and held them in place. That person was aware of the danger and was vigorously tried to free himself from Ye Gu Han's grasp. He was about to succeed when a cold light rose from Ye Gu Han's sword and made its way towards his chest. The sword of death. A blood-curdling scream escaped that man's mouth as he desperately tried to evade the oncoming attack. But Ye Gu Han's sword swooped up in a moment and pierced him right up to its hilt. It didn't pierce his heart. However, the Xian Qi attached to that sword left his 5 frail visceral points in shambles. However, Ye Gu Han had finally run out of steam now. He had stuck his sword into his enemy's chest, but didn't have the strength to draw it out this time. One of his remaining opponents bellowed. However, Ye Gu Han didn't even have the strength to pull his sword out. His right hand was cut off by his enemy's sword. But surprisingly, no blood flowed out of that wound. The blood in his body had already flowed out by now. His face was reveled in a mocking smile. Yet, his eyes were still full of tender affection as he looked in a particular direction. the direction of the imperial palace. One of the black-clad people leapt up and kicked Yi Gu Han hard. His body was sent flying up in the air. Yi Gu Han fell down heavily. But still, Yi Gu Han stubbornly turned his body over. Suddenly, there was a loud and terrifying sound. The sound of his ribs being crushed. However, there was not a single sign of pain on his face. His eyes had never so proud before. Neither had they ever been so desolate. They were full of inexhaustible gentleness and yearning. Not a lot remained of his life. Yet he couldn't see his beloved. So, looking at the place where she resided, the direction in which she was, would have to do. He had hidden his feelings for a long time, but all of them came gushing out. I think of you. Xiao Xiao. I think of you. I think of you. Yi Gu Han's mind was suddenly hit by an incomparably bright light, and many memories from the past started flooding it. He was already in a state of trance, but these images inside his mind were lifelike. This dream seemed real. And then, he heard a gentle voice. It was lightly reading a small poem again and again. It seemed to go on endlessly, like a tiny thing that was floating in a vast area. It was just like a dream. Don't regret such deep affection. I willingly fall and wither into loneliness. The regret of my beloved can haunt an eternity. I shall give up on the heavens, but not on my beloved. These were the parting verses which Yi Gu Han had written for Murong Xiao Xiao, 18 years ago. I shall give up on the heavens, but not on my beloved. Yi Gu Han couldn't speak. However, his lips still opened and closed slightly. And if one were to pay close attention, they would notice that he was repeating the last line of that poem. Xiao Xiao. I had left 18 years ago, and I lost you forever. I had left you with this poem. And you cried incessantly as you read the last verse. I remember to this day, the way your long hair was disheveled in the wind then. Now, I'm leaving once again. And I will never return after I leave this time. You may become aware later, that just like before, I was recalling the last lines of that poem in my final moments. I shall give up on the heavens, but not on my beloved. Xiao Xiao. I could never turn my back on you all my life. I have never turned my back on you. Zhou Jianming roared like a madman and rushed to cut Yi Gu Han's body into pieces. But Lei Jianhong called out to him in a loud voice. Enough. His Xian Qi is already exhausted, and his 5 visceral points are done for. We need to pick up the injured 4th and 5th, and capture that little girl. Hurry. We need to move quickly. We can't stay here for long. Zhou Jianmin and the female combatant were very angry. They screamed their frustrations out. Then they each picked up their 4th and 5th brother. They then departed like lightning towards the direction where Princess Ling Meng had escaped. Meanwhile, Princess Ling Meng was being pulled by her 2 sisters. They were trying to force her to escape. But she kept looking back at the raging battle. However, when she saw Yi Gu Han covered in blood from head to toe, she collapsed. The princess then suddenly turned towards that direction and screamed in a wild fit, "Uncle Yi!" Her voice was extremely sad and shrill. The princess' feet were rooted to the ground as she refused to move even half a step. Suddenly, she unintentionally welled up, and tears started gushing out of her eyes. Uncle Yi had always protected her since childhood. To her, he was unrivaled in his generation. She knew that he had felt desolate and heartbroken every day of his life. He was a sad and lonely man. And today, he had fallen, just to protect her. Princess Ling Meng suddenly felt a searing pain in her chest. She felt as if her lungs had been split open. There was no bonding in the Tian family. She knew that her father, the emperor, was very fond of her. She had known this since the day she was old enough to understand things. In fact, he would go to the extent of spoiling her and indulging in her appearance. However, her father, the emperor, was too dignified. Even when she missed him and acted spoilt in order to be embraced by him, her father would give her a cherished hug, but he never held her for long. He would always have some matter to take care of. He would then return to being the dignified emperor once again. Father and emperor. When these two are considered together, the emperor would always be given more importance than the father. Father. The emperor. Her father would turn into the emperor whenever the need arose. Then, she couldn't act like that person's daughter. Yi Guhan felt more like a real father to her. She could act like a spoilt child in front of him without any inhibitions, and could throw small tantrums whenever she felt like. So, even if she called him uncle, she considered him her father. He would always pamper her. However, he would scold her without mercy if she made a mistake. But he was really nice to me. He has always been guarding me in silence. He never appeared in public. He never strove for anything. He never even demanded anything for himself. He just stayed in the shadows. And he seemed very satisfied. But he was the first one to appear and defend me whenever I faced any danger. He was the first one to stand up to my brothers when they bullied me. He would give his all to look after me. Even now, he lies fallen for my sake. He has finally collapsed. In all these years, he must have become very tired. Uncle Yi. Do you want to rest? Don't you want to see your little Ling Meng? Do you have the heart to cast away your little Ling Meng and leave? Do you have the heart to? Do you have the heart to? Uncle Yi, you know that in my heart, you will always be my father. Father. Please don't leave me. Princess Ling Meng stood there motionless. She didn't know what she was doing or thinking. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei tried their best. But she remained motionless. Why hasn't my father, the emperor, arrived yet? Why? Why hasn't he showed up when Uncle Yi is doing his best? He ought to come. If Uncle Yi truly leaves me, I will retaliate. I will go crazy and take revenge against everyone. I will dedicate my life to my revenge. Princess Ling Meng roared in her heart, and it seemed that her chest was about to explode with anger. However, she was unable to say it out loud. Tears blurred her vision, and it seemed that a 5,000 kg rock had blocked her throat. Her hands and feet were cold. Her entire body shuddered as if she had been transported to a world of ice and snow. The three black-clad assailants with masked faces overtook them. Lei Jianhong angrily rushed towards Princess Ling Meng to capture her. However, Princess Ling Meng just stood there with a blank expression. She didn't react to this situation in any way. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei threw themselves in front of her. Their bodies were glowing with a golden light. The fact that they had reached the edge of the gold Xian level was quite remarkable, especially when one considers their ages. The two women took out a knife and a blade, and prepared to fight. However, the opposite party's strength. Ef a sec off. Lei Jianhong waved his hands, and the two women were thrown back. I don't wish to kill you. Don't force me. Who are you? Who are you? It seemed like Princess Ling Meng had just been roused from a dream. She didn't feel frightened. She had to avenge her Uncle Yi. Her eyes were full of hatred. Who are you people? Why am I so important to you? Why did you kill my Uncle Yi? The princess had roared out the last sentence. The loud shout startled Lei Jianhong. Such a delicate and frail woman can issue such a sharp and resounding sound. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 262. To save or not to save? You do not need to know our identities. And you certainly don't need to know the reason behind our actions. You anyway have no chance of living. Lei Jianhong had no idea why he had divulged their intention to this woman. I won't let you off for this. I will kill you and your family. I will kill you. Tears suddenly filled Princess Ling Meng's eyes. However, she forcefully opened them and stared without blinking. I won't even spare your ghosts. It seemed that her shrill and mournful scream had split open the blue dome of heaven. The autumn wind rustled. Her hair started to drift about like dead leaves as the whistling sound of the blowing wind got louder and louder. Even then, she somehow exuded a sense of beauty. The pupils of Lei Jianhong's eyes suddenly shrank behind his mask. He felt a chill run through him. He trembled a little as his intuition warned him about her. He felt somewhat ashamed at getting frightened. I am a great Sky Xian expert. Yet, just a few words from this young woman made me nervous. That's unreasonable. Bang! Lei Jianhong flew into a rage because of his shame, and gave a tight slap to Princess Mingleng. He then rebuked, "Smelly whore. Your death is at hand, and yet you talk like this? Don't trust too much in your confidence, else I'll kill you right now." Princess Ling Meng's face swelled with the man's palm print and her hair scattered down from the wind. However, she stubbornly kept on staring him. And her gaze was full of bitter hatred. Lei Jianhong looked at the venomous expression on Princess Ling Meng's face again. An obscure anger rose inside of him when he realized that the princess still hadn't given up. Moreover, this princess had an important connection with those throwing knives which had killed 4 of his fellow disciples. And tonight, this woman's bodyguard had seriously injured 2 more of his brother disciples. Anger rose unabated in his heat for a moment. And extreme hatred was soon stemmed from his guts as he thought of killing her there and then. The 3rd female disciple saw her brother disciple filling with the desire to kill. She hurriedly advised, "Senior brother, this woman is related to that person. So it would be better if we don't kill her till that man arrives to save her." Lei Jianhong clenched his teeth. He then suddenly chopped down on the nape of the princess' neck. She fainted. He then picked her up and tossed her to the 3rd disciple. Then, he ordered everyone to move out. Put the princess down. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei rushed to stop the opposite party. They were aware that they would be no match for them. However, they just couldn't allow the enemy to capture Princess Ling Meng and get away. Lei Jianhong snorted coldly. The female disciple rose to meet them. And then, bang! Bang! The 2 young women were struck by a palm each. They flew backwards with wisps of blood flowing from the corners of their mouths. The 3 black-clothed individuals then flew up and disappeared. It's not that Lei Jianhong didn't wish to kill the 2 women, he just couldn't. His hatred dictated no other option in the princess's matter. However, in the case of the other 2 women, one had the support of the Sun and the Tang family, while the other had the backing of the Dugas. The 3 great families would come together if something were to happen to those 2. They would become a problem big enough to put his younger brother Li's family in a disadvantageous position. A little while later, a little white shadow flashed past. It was followed by hoof beats. Their sound resembled that of a rain shower. The hoof beats had sounded only a moment ago. And a strong horse was already turning the street to arrive at the scene of the battle. Silhouettes flashed as 2 men descended from the horseback. There was a pool of blood on the ground. Yi Gu Han's lone body lay in the midst of it. Little Yi. Yi Gu Han. Jun Yi exclaimed in alarm. He dropped down beside Yi Gu Han's body. He was supposed to hide the truth about his healed legs, but he had abandoned that appearance now. He kneeled beside Yi Gu Han and took his left wrist in his hand. Then, pure Xian Qi started to flow from Jun Yi and into the seriously injured man. Yi Gu Han didn't have much life force left in him. Yi Gu Han had suffered major blood loss. His body had also been inflicted with serious injuries. His energy reserves had all but dried up. His chances of survival looked very slim. Had it not been for the concerns and anxiety of his heart, perhaps he wouldn't have survived till now. However, his expression had already started to slacken. It seemed as if his spirit had started to leave his body. He had incomparable willpower, but it's hard to resist a lapse of life force when the angel of death descends. Then, Yi Gu Han's consciousness cleared because of the pure Xian Qi that flowed into his body from Jun Yi's. He forced his eyes open and saw Jun Yi's thin face. His eyes lit up as an expression of urgency overtook his face. Anxious, plea. Yi Gu Han was full of such emotions. What happened here? Jun Yi asked with a sense of urgency, but Yi Gu Han was unable to speak. Jun Yi then looked around. This street is supposed to be bustling with people. But there is no one else here. It's so quiet. Isn't this very strange? Where has everyone gone off to? Does anybody know what happened here? Jun Yi roared in anger. The entire street reverberated with his shout. Still, no one replied. Yi Gu Han and Jun Yi were contemporaries of their generation. In fact, the third master of the Jun family was a little older than Yi Gu Han. The Yi and the Jun family used to have a somewhat friendly relationship. Therefore, Jun Yi and Yi Gu Han used to be friends. Then, the Yi family's power declined. And so, Jun Yi and Yi Gu Han hadn't seen each other since. That happened around 10 years ago. Jun Yi hadn't expected to see his dear friend after 10 years, and that too when the man was on the brink of death. Yi Gu Han felt Jun Yi's pure Xian Qi enter his system. He was surprised to realize that Jun Yi had surpassed his cultivation. Jun Yi had reached the upper reaches of the mid-sky Xian level. It was very astonishing. However, Yi Gu Han also felt his chances at living fade away at the same time. Therefore, his eyes became more and more urgent as the pure Xian Qi entered his body, but it was soon replaced by a look of pure wrath. Jun Yi looked on as Yi Gu Han's aura became weaker and weaker. He then looked up. Moxie, can you save him? Jun Moxie sighed. Third uncle is asking me to do this, even he can't do it himself. Truth to be told, the young master Jun had full faith in the Hongjun Pagoda's abilities. He was sure that he could revive a person regardless of the extent of their injuries. He had been able to eliminate the poison that had plagued his uncle's body for a decade. In fact, it had even worked when Hai Chen Feng had smashed his own Dantian and Xian Qi circulation to pieces. Yi Gu Han's condition was very precarious. In fact, he was almost done for. However, Jun Moxie never considered himself a savior. Moreover, he didn't have any favorable opinions of Yi Gu Han and Princess Ling Meng. In fact, assisting them was likely to result in more trouble for him. Hence, there wouldn't be the slightest advantage in helping him. This transaction would result only in a loss. However, it was his third uncle who was asking for help. It was difficult for him to refuse his uncle in such a situation. Therefore, Jun Moxie unhurriedly and unwillingly crouched alongside his uncle. He reached with his arm and took Yi Gu Han's hand from Jun Wuyi. He then slowly closed his own eyes. Next, he initiated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. The pure Xian Qi started to pour out steadily. However, his eyebrows couldn't help but twitch a little. The young Master Jun was startled by the extent of Yi Gu Han's injuries. They can't be taken lightly. His injuries are similar to the ones Hai Chen Feng had suffered. It's almost certain that he will die from these injuries. In fact, it's a miracle that he has held on and hasn't died from his wounds. It seems that he doesn't have even half of his breath left. It seems that his conviction is the only thing that remains in his body. Jun Moxie's aura covered the injured man's body. He had been injured in many places. There must be at least 30 places where he suffered injuries, perhaps more. His lower abdomen was pierced. His shoulder was damaged seriously by sword energy. The sides of his body had been opened. The palm attacks on his chest had completely shattered his rib cage, and his 5 vital points had been displaced. He was in a very bad state. D*MN. Jun Moxie had the utmost confidence in his art of unlocking heaven's fortune when confronted with such a condition. However, he didn't see the slightest of chance of curing Yi Gu Han. Jun Moxie could only extend the man's life by preventing his injuries from getting worse by ensuring that he didn't die from them. However, he couldn't provide surety of healing the man. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei staggered towards them from the distance. They called out in a loud voice, "Brother Moxie, the princess has been captured. We must quickly save her." Jun Moxie could tell that the 2 women had been injured badly as well. He was about to welcome them. However, he remained seated after he heard their words. He thought, "How is the princess's fate any of my business? Why on earth are you demanding me to do my utmost for her? I've got nothing to do with her. And can't you see Yi Gu Han's condition? And now you want my third uncle to do his utmost? Why? And for what reason?" However, Yi Gu Han's entire body started to tremble when he heard this. His face, which was deathly pale, suddenly flushed with a bit of color. His eyes became a little brighter and warm with hope. He looked at Jun Moxie and Jun Wuyi, entreating them to save the princess. Yi Gu Han was grasping at straws. He had noticed that Jun Wuyi's level had exceeded his own, and that he was at the border of the Sky Xian realm's mid-mark. Therefore, there would still be a chance of saving the princess if we're to undertake the task. Jun Wuyi thought for a moment and asked softly, "You want us to save the princess?" Yi Gu Han's eyes showed a shred of happiness in response. "Stop with the fuss. How do you think we will save her with our strengths? Just speak frankly. You want us to throw away our lives?" Jun Moxie continued to use the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. He didn't even raise his eyebrows. Third Uncle Xian Qi has reached a high level. But his body is still weak. His health is infirm. And he is unable to walk. And they had the strength to leave you like this. Not only are you asking my uncle, but you're even asking someone as weak as me? Moreover, I don't have any intention of saving her. Nor do I have the strength. There is an ancient saying, life and death. The fates are decided by the heavens. This must an act of fate. Do you think that I'm foolish? Work hard to no avail. What good would it bring us if save that stupid princess? My third uncle's recovery will be exposed along with his strength. Not only that, my strength will be exposed in that process too. Is it not enough that I've stopped you from dying? Can't you be content with that? Even if there were others in my place, even the 8 great masters wouldn't have been able to use this method. Not even Yun Bei Chen. Yi Gu Han's breathing was already weak. But now it became urgent and frantic since he had started to pant heavily due to his anger. Jun Moxie could feel a rapid increase in his pulse. His chest shook as he gasped for air. And because of that, a bone in that area got fractured. It made a distinct sound. Yi Guhan stubbornly looked at Jun Moxie. His expression was one of inexhaustible anger at first, then one of sadness before it eventually turned into one of a pleading man. Jun Moxie's heart shook as he witnessed such a mournful expression. He was sure that Yi Guhan would have undoubtedly abandoned his self-respect and pride if he could speak, and would have then beseeched the young Master Jun to save the princess. Suddenly, Yi Guhan's face flushed, and a gurgling noise emanated from his throat. It seemed that he was using the entirety of his remaining strength for one last effort. His mouth opened, but he was barely able to spit out two weak words: request, save. Then, his head crooked and he fainted without a whimper. Yi Guhan had chosen to burn the last of his life force to say these words. He hadn't been able to finish his sentence. However, Jun Moxie and Jun Wei clearly understood what he meant to ask of them. I request you, save Ling Meng. He had spent the last moments of his life and his life force to make this request. Is he dead? Jun Wei seemed sad and anxious as he asked. He hasn't died yet, though he's nearly dead. He is in a somewhat suspended condition near death. Jun Moxie's hand was still pouring pure aura into Yi Guhan. However, things could take a turn for the worst if his condition remains the same. To save people is like putting out a fire. You still haven't saved everyone. Debauchee rushed over. She cried out as she grabbed the front of Jun Moxie's jacket. Hurry up and save Princess Ling Meng. What are you waiting for? How is this my concern? Jun Moxie looked at inexplicably. Why do you want me to save the princess? A prince or something should be dealing with this matter. You want me to go and throw away my life? Yi Guhan is Sky Xian expert. Can't you see how they've turned him into a mere sack of blood? I've no strength in comparison, yet you want me to go and save her? How can those words even come out from your mouth? Jun Moxie rebuked in his heart. Princess Ling Meng is not you. So why on earth should I exert myself for such a stupid matter? I had rushed over for your sake. Who thought it would turn into such a big problem? Then what do we do? Debauchee recalled that Jun Moxie was that powerful. In fact, he couldn't even match her. So how would he deal with multiple Sky Xian experts? What had she just said? She suddenly regretted her words, and was now at a loss. Why, haven't those guards from the Imperial Palace arrived yet? Those words were of no interest to the listeners. Jun Wei and Jun Moxie looked at each other in tacit understanding. Moxie, as an act of kindness to Yi Guhan, we should help. And after all, she is the princess. Jun Wei said in a tactful manner. He knew that his nephew wasn't interested in Princess Ling Meng. He was well aware that his nephew would actually sit and watch idly. Hence, he decided to use Yi Guhan's name instead of the princess. He had said this since he had already figured that his nephew would make no attempts to rescue her otherwise. He knew his nephew well. He knew his nephew was more than capable of doing just that. In fact, that would be the youngster's natural instinct, and he'd bear a clear conscience in the regard as well. I won't do it. I have no interest. Jun Moxie refused his third uncle as well. He had a faint feeling that this doesn't seem like a minor matter. The cost of my identity's exposure would be far from inconsequential. I wouldn't do anything since it has nothing to do with me, even if she were the daughter of a deity. Let alone she's a princess. I would rather use this free time to tease Little White. Then again, the great assassin Jun won't work when I have no advantage from the transaction. I will go. Even if you don't. Jun Wuyi angrily propped up from the ground and jumped onto the horse. I do not go for the princess. But I go for Yi Gu Han. Yi Gu Han would commit a bloody purge of the city for the princess just as your grandfather did for you. How can we sit back and ignore such affections? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 263. Get someone else to do one's dirty work. Jun Moxie wouldn't have agreed irrespective of what his uncle would have said except that he mentioned that incident. And this moved the young master Jun deeply. Jun Moxie's heart shook. He suddenly remembered the manner in which Jun Zhantien had issued a call to war. The manner in which his grandfather had led his troops to commit that purge in the capital. This memory suddenly warmed his heart. This memory moved Jun Moxie the most. Hitman Jun was aware that his third uncle's decision was based more on sentiment than reason. However, it would result in a lot of harm to the Jun family if Jun Wuyi truly undertook that task regardless of his success in saving the princess. However, the heavens find a way when a man of noble character sets out on a righteous task. It would be difficult to cover up his uncle's involvement if the well-known general was to get involved in the matter. However, if Jun Moxie himself undertook the task, then... Fine then. I'll go. D***mn. Jun Moxie took a deep breath. Then, he quickly transferred the pure Xian Qi into Yi Gu Han's dry meridians to keep him alive for the time being. But you need not accompany me. Uncle I alone will be more than sufficient. So, you first return home. But ensure that his body doesn't sway much on the way back. I understand these rescue operations. Unlike you, Jun Wuyi interrupted him. But I will unwillingly step back. You're correct to have faith in me, however. Those are 5 Sky Xian experts. Jun Moxie smiled bitterly. He got up and mounted his horse. Then, he pressed his legs to the horse's side and prepared to speed away. You, scoundrel! You, be careful! Dugu Xiaoyi's heart was suddenly seized by her affection for Jun Moxie. She was very well aware of the Jun scoundrel's strength. She felt like blocking his way to prevent him from leaving. Dugu Xiaoyi was extremely anxious. So much so that she temporarily harbored a selfish thought: it's better to keep this scoundrel safe than rescue the princess. Jun Moxie mounted his horse and paused for a moment. He decided that he wouldn't look back since he had chosen a course of action. His horse neighed and raised its hooves. It then galloped off at great speed. Dugu Xiaoyi's delicate body trembled. Sun Xiaomei slowly came up beside her and held her hand. She then said, "Don't worry. Nothing will happen to him." Elder sister Xiaomei, I was too much, compelling him like this. What would I do if something happened to him? Dugu Xiaoyi asked hesitatingly. She was worried out of her wits. He won't. Relax. Sun Xiaomei thought. How did you force him? It was the third master Jun's words. He probably wouldn't have listened if you had tried to force him 10,000 times. You couldn't have forced him. I'm afraid that the present you is incapable of compelling him to do anything. However, these words would have left Dugu Xiaoyi heartbroken. Therefore, Sun Xiaomei could only think about it. As chance has it, the attack on Princess Ling Meng, Yi Gu Han's arrival, his fierce battle, him getting seriously injured, and finally, Lei Jianhong grabbing the princess and leaving all of it had been observed by an individual hidden in the darkness. This person was none other than Mr. Wen. He had followed Princess Ling Meng into the aristocratic hall as the second black-clothed man. The aristocratic hall allowed each invitee to have 2 companions. The emperor had taken one place in Princess Ling Meng's party. Mr. Wen had then become her second guest, and had filled the last spot. Besides his status, Mr. Wen possessed enormous strength. So much so that even Hai Chen Feng wouldn't be able to deal with him. Things would have naturally been very different in case he had decided to lend a helping hand. It was a pity that he didn't. Mr. Wen admired the loyalty and affection which Yi Gu Han had displayed. He felt the urge to assist Yi Gu Han several times during the battle. However, he unfortunately could not. The emperor had made a plan to draw out that mysterious master, and this plan would have come to naught if he had attacked. That Sky Xian expert had become a nightmare for Tianxiang's emperor after he had saved Princess Ling Meng. The emperor simply couldn't allow such powerful and unknown Sky Xian experts in his empire, especially when he couldn't keep an eye on them. It wouldn't have mattered if this man were just a hermit. However, he had some connection to Princess Ling Meng and could get involved in imperial disputes. The possibility of such a powerful entity's involvement in imperial matters wasn't good news to the emperor's ears. Therefore, the emperor couldn't tolerate his existence. His intentions may have been good, but it was still important to understand this man. The emperor wouldn't be at ease until this man's position was clear to him. This mysterious Sky Xian expert was one matter. But the mysterious man behind the aristocratic hall had also turned into a nightmare for the emperor. Mr. Wen felt a sense of contradiction within himself, for the first time since his birth. He had helplessly looked on at Yi Gu Han as he fell to the ground, and lay there in silence. Mr. Wen was usually a calm man, however. He had grinded his teeth so hard that they almost snapped off. He's a great man. He burned every bit of his energy in order to help the princess. And the person who could have actually helped the princess is being forced to sit and watch from the sidelines. Conscience? What conscience? Ah! However, Princess Ling Meng had been captured. That mysterious Sky Xian peak expert must be drawn out. And nothing should happen to the princess. The emperor had entrusted him with this task. What to do with Yi Gu Han? He's breathing his last breaths. Mr. Wen didn't have a choice. He didn't have the heart to ignore this. However, he couldn't do anything about it. Therefore, he looked on with regret as Yi Gu Han's body fell on the ground, and sighed with remorse. Then, he shot off in the direction where those assailants had escaped with the princess, and started to give them a chase. A strong wind blew in his face as he started pursuing them. And at that moment, he realized something. This whole plan was put together to draw out that mysterious expert, and to find the culprit behind the attacks on Princess Ling Meng. However, he knew the emperor well. The emperor may have other selfish motives behind this matter. They had never talked about it since the great and wise emperor obviously must have been embarrassed to admit it. However, Mr. Wen could understand Yi Gu Han's existence was a matter of anxiety for the emperor. In fact, it was a matter of great anxiety. No man could endure another eyeing his wife for more than a decade. It was out of question to discard such a situation even when it came to the great emperor's heart. The emperor was, after all, also a man. In fact, his desire for control would be greater than others. It certainly couldn't have been weaker. It didn't matter that the man hadn't crossed the line. As long as the thought was there, it was a huge crime warranting no pardon from a capital punishment. It was necessary for Yi Gu Han to die. This thing was the real purpose among several other more pressing matters. The emperor had in fact killed with a borrowed knife. He planned this arrangement. No wonder the princess's bodyguards were so weak and had no desire to act. No wonder he sent just me to rescue the princess. And no one else. No wonder. It was almost the same as a ban on any other help, so that's what's going on. Mr. Wen had no choice but to admire the conduct of the country's emperor. His plan was precise and accurate. His thinking was cautious and meticulous. My own schemes can't be as malicious as his. He could see the three people in the distance ahead of him. However, Mr. Wen was having a tough time in understanding his own emotions. Jun Moxie rode his horse swiftly and quickly crossed several streets. He was ruthless whipping the horse, and it was traveling at the speed of an arrow. The corners his powerful horse's mouth had started to foam. The young Master Jun quickly looked around to see that no one else was there. Then, he tightened his grip on his horse using his legs. He then tossed away the reins. Then, Jun Moxie's towering silhouette disappeared from on the horse's back. The horse let out a long neigh and stopped as the young Master Jun disappeared. The reins thrown away by the young Master Jun got entangled in a nearby tree and formed of a tight loop. He would either do something or not. But when he did act, he'd do it with a sense of swift decisiveness. He would give his all. This was the hitman Jun's code of conduct. Nothing would matter once he had made up his mind. It wouldn't have mattered if Princess Ling Meng was hacked to pieces in front of him if he had decided against saving her. Hitman Jun would just calmly look on. In fact, he might have commented on how the knife technique wasn't good, or how the weapon wasn't sharp enough. However, since he had decided to save her, he would ensure that not a hair on her body was harmed. He would rescue her whole, and then escape. Strong aura was flowing all around. It was as if a meteor shower had slammed forcefully into the ocean, and had evoked large waves in the sky. These waves then rolled around in all the four directions, endlessly. Jun Moxie initiated the yin-yang escape. His speed increased tremendously in comparison to his regular swiftness. He was like an illusion. He was at one place at one moment, and at another the next. There was no one who could see this mysterious scene. However, the young Master Jun was really enjoying himself. Jun Moxie had realized that he had started to get increasingly proficient at controlling yin-yang escape ever since he had unlocked the second level of the Hongjun Pagoda. In fact, he could now use it according to his desires. Jun Moxie was wholeheartedly making use of this skill right now. He felt fully integrated with the world, and had a feeling of detachment from all worldly matters. It felt as if he could go anywhere in this vast world. No place was beyond as long as he desired it. The art of unlocking the heavens' fortune was flowing like the Yangtze River inside his body, unending and unlimited. Aura was continuously seeping out of the Hongjun Pagoda. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune was working without any clogs. There was a flow of unceasing aura within his body since he had opened the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. And this entire aura was going straight into the Hongjun Pagoda again. These things had apparently taken the form of a loop. A perfect loop. Jun Moxie couldn't help but recall some of the Daoist teachings from his previous life, even though he hadn't been able to understand them at that point. Life is like a sea of misery, and the human body is the only raft available to cross it. Jun Moxie felt that those words were very much in line with his present condition. The young Master Jun wanted to remain in that wondrous state for a longer period of time. However, the prevailing situation didn't allow him extend the time period for which he could remain in that state. It was truly a pity. How could reality ever fulfill people's expectations? Suddenly, there was a change up ahead. Jun Moxie whooshed across and silently covered over 30 meters in one step. He only left behind one whirlpool of wind after another in that illusory state. and these whirlpools were slow to subside. 3 people were continuously changing direction as they moved towards the outside of the city. They were like wisps of smoke. Their movements were swift and nimble. The motion of their limbs was smart. However, he could see that those 3 people were quite formidable. These people would somehow know if someone was coming towards them from the front. They would then shift their positions to avoid meeting the person. These people hadn't bumped into anyone the entire way, except for a few common people. And a common person wouldn't be able to detect them given the speed they were moving at. He would just feel a burst of cool breeze blowing towards him, and the assailants would continue without leaving a single trace. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 264. You got framed. Jun Moxie took a deep breath, and then increased his speed further. He stayed a bit over 100 meters behind the 3 black-clothed people, and matched their pace. He suddenly detected a fluctuating aura, and realized that someone else was also shadowing these 3. And he could tell from that person's movements that his cultivation was much higher than the 3 he was chasing. Don't tell me, is he from the Imperial Palace? Jun Moxie contemplated for a while and came up with a plan. Mr. Wen also felt someone else's presence. However, he couldn't locate this person when he looked around. However, Mr. Wen had a very powerful awareness, and he could tell that this other person was an inconceivably formidable expert. But why can't I locate him? The area opened up ahead. The 3 indistinguishable shadows jumped over the city walls, and fled far away in a matter of moments. Mr. Wen chose that moment to investigate, and halted there on purpose for a while. He didn't believe that those youngsters could break away from him. So, he decided to see how that man could hide himself in that wide-open expanse. I don't think that the greatest of the senior-most generation could hide themselves from my eyes in this large and open area. However, Mr. Wen would be disappointed. He waited for a moment, but couldn't catch that person. All he could do was feel a strong and formidable aura arrive, and then go away into the distance. In fact, the aura traversed into the distance through that bare space. Yet, he couldn't even see the man. How is this possible? A man such as this exists in the mortal world. Mr. Wen took a deep breath. However, his insides were now brimming with burning aspirations. What a great life it would be, if I were to fight such an expert hand-to-hand. Mr. Wen quickly adjusted his personal state after almost spitting out air, and then lightly jumped off as well. He floated down the city walls as light as a strand of hair. And then, he too faded away in the distance. The sleep-deprived soldiers guarding the gate didn't notice any of it, and remained ignorant of what happened. Big brother, the condition of 5th doesn't look very good. I've been pouring Xian Qi into him, but it's not making any difference. We need to cure his injuries quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid. Zhou Jianming's voice had a sense of urgency to it. Yi Gu Han was truly fierce. The 4th's condition is also bad. Lei Jianhong gnashed his teeth with hatred. He then rapidly said, the 5th's condition is quite serious. But he will be back to normal if we heal his injuries successfully. However, 4th has been permanently disabled. His shoulder has been cut off and his face has been disfigured, d*mn that Yi Gu Han. I didn't expect this Yi Gu Han to be that much of a problem. We're each at Sky Xian level. We aren't inferior to anyone in this empire. That man had to face us all at once. And yet things still turned out this way. The 3rd female disciple, Fang Piaohong, sighed. Fortunately, he was left for dead. Though it is a pity what he did to the 4th brother. This is all because of this B**tch Ling Meng. Lei Jian Hong roared angrily. I'll make this B**tch regret her life after I find out about that mysterious man with the throwing knives. I'll take care of her, what a bullsh*t princess she is. We must wait till Master arrives even if we get our desired outcome. Fang Piao Hong sighed again. The fourth and the fifth brothers are dying. The sixth has no hope for recovery. The seventh to 10th bones have already been buried in the Tianxiang city. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen, that things could turn out like this, she continued with another sigh. Master will fly into a rage when he hears about this. Big brother. Master will arrive in 2 days. You must make preparations for his arrival. What preparations can I make? Lei Jianhong said somewhat despairingly. If our father doesn't beat me to death, I fear he will put me in condition where I'll be bedridden for half a year. I had led 9 disciples here, and now, only the 3 of us remain. Won't this be a huge blow to our old man? It'll be a miracle if he forgives me easily. Zhou Jianming also sighed. I suppose we 3 can't take it easy now. Master will arrive after 2 days. At the appointed time, oh dear. I don't have the guts to imagine how the old man will react. Master had poured all his heart into us 11 disciples, now, oh dear. I don't know how he'll grieve. Fang Piao Hong said sadly. She couldn't prevent her eyes from becoming red. A small grove appeared in front of them as they talked. They first looked behind to see that they weren't being followed. Then, they entered it without hesitation. Hitman Jun followed them from behind like a formless being without any physical properties. He floated in the air as he followed them in. Jun Moxie had listened to the kidnappers very carefully. Lei Wubei's disciples had also taken part in the raid for the Xian Corps on that night with the thunderstorm. Jun Moxie was startled by what he heard. Lei Wubei, the cold-blooded master is arriving in Tianxiang City in 2 days? This is big news. The 3 people were cautious even though they were inside dense woods. They changed directions and turned twice. First left. And then right. Then, they stopped in front of a dry tree stump. Then, their senior-most disciple Lei Jianhong extended his hand and pressed something at an unknown place. The tree stump suddenly moved away and revealed a huge stone slab. And that slab then moved away to reveal the round entrance of a cave. Jun Moxie took a single step and disappeared inside the moment it was revealed. The cave was genuinely safe at that moment since there was no one inside. The 3 people including Lei Jianhong adjusted their positions and entered deeper, slowly and cautiously. This cave was very narrow, and 2 people couldn't go inside at the same time without bumping into each other. Had they known that the young Master Jun was already there, quietly waiting for them to enter. The tree stump slowly returned to its original position after they entered. The ground once again looked undisturbed. Not a single sound of any activity could be heard. Mr. Wen had followed those 3 people till the grove. They hadn't been able to evade him or go out of the range of his sense of detection. In fact, he had seen them enter the woods. However, he had wasted some time in an attempt to search for that formidable person. Therefore, he had arrived a little too late at the cave's entrance. The stump had returned to its original place by the time he had arrived. There wasn't even a single abrasion left to indicate the entrance. He searched everywhere, but couldn't locate where the people he had followed had gone off to. Mr. Wen could only feel their auras. He could clearly feel that they were nearby, but he couldn't locate them. He couldn't help but worry. This was truly a case of an old cat burning its whiskers. Mr. Wen was certain that these people must have gone underground using a mysterious mechanism in order to hide their trail. However, where did they go after digging into the ground? He was sure that he could draw them out if he launched his skill to sweep across the area. But that would arouse their suspicion. It was a pity that he had to beat the grass to scare the snake. He couldn't think of another plan. However, Princess Ling Meng would remain in their hands if they didn't show themselves. And what will I do if something bad happens to her? How will I face the emperor? Mr. Wen felt somewhat embarrassed as he frowned. He thought hard and incessantly about countermeasures for that eventuality. The cave led to a huge space. The soil was patted down firmly. However, the place had a somewhat damp smell to it since it was underground. You two, hurry up and heal the fourth and fifth. I will question this B*TCH. Lei Jianhong had a somewhat murderous look about him. Big brother, I know they're your junior disciple brothers, and you're angry with Princess Ling Meng. But I must urge that you consider your methods for bit. Fang Qiaohong hesitated, but she continued nevertheless. I can see that this matter has brought pain to Brother Yuran. I can see that our identities haven't been exposed. If we ask Brother Yuran to arrive while feigning to be a good person, and he comes as a hero saving the princess from danger. If Yuran is successful in this way, it would be considered. That's good. Contact Brother Yuran. I won't harm her. Lei Jianhong gnashed his teeth. Fang Qiaohong cleared her throat, but remained silent. She then diverted her full attention and energy to heal her fellow disciple. Jun Moxie's heart started to beat wildly in the darkness. Brother Yuran? These two characters. Yuran. Li Yuran, this meant that the youngster couldn't be taken lightly anymore. Don't tell me. Li Yuran is involved with these people in this huge incident? Lei Jianhong picked Princess Ling Meng in his arms, and then set her down against the wall. He then reached above and placed his hand on her head. Pure Xian Qi entered her body. This made the princess wake up. You rascal! Let me go! Princess Ling Meng had barely opened her eyes and was already very angry. She shouted, I want to go to Uncle Yi. Let me go. Your Majesty, you wish to be free, and you will be, easily. All I need from you is an answer to one question. And then, you'll be allowed to leave. Lei Jianhong snorted. He said this to her as he sneered. Your Highness, you embrace several throwing knives and hold those damaged knife very dearly. Isn't that strange? Princess Ling Meng? Honorable Princess, I'll set you free if you tell me who the owner of these knives is. I won't break my promise. The owner of the throwing knives? Princess Ling Meng opened her eyes in astonishment. These people had kidnapped her just to ask about this matter? I have never seen that highly skilled person. So, how would I know? Haha, Princess. When you speak like that, do you take the three of us for children? Lei Jianhong smiled ruthlessly. Many of my junior brother disciples were killed by him. In fact, we had never heard of anyone that's skilled in the secular world. But the first task he had undertaken was meant to save your life. Don't tell me that the princess has forgotten. That man had arrived the last time you had encountered assassins. His first and only action was to save your life. But he truly is a ghost if the princess insists on not knowing his identity. Jun Moxie shook on the inside. He had saved the princess in secrecy the last time she was attacked. Have I implicated her by saving her? This resentment was hard to figure. How did these people know the connection between these two independent matters? Jun Moxie's train thought immediately went to Li Yuran. So that's how it is. Everything gets resolved if we take the Li family into consideration. You killed Uncle Yi for this question? Princess Ling Meng couldn't move. However, her eyes bulged as she looked at her captor with utter hatred. It seemed like she would start to shoot flames at him soon. Well, the princess, she can forget about leaving this place since she insists on not telling us about the origin of these knives. Lei Jianhong gave an evil smile as he said this in a low voice. We have several other methods with which we can make you speak. Jun Moxie was urgently thinking of the actions he could take. He had thought that he would approach Princess Ling Meng and then disappear with her by using the Hongjun Pagoda. However, he was unsuccessful despite several tries. Apparently the Hongjun Pagoda can't accommodate anyone besides me. Or perhaps my cultivation isn't enough? Jun Moxie's wishful thinking was shattered into pieces since that plan didn't work. It would have been very easy for him if the princess could have been transported into the Hongjun Pagoda. Jun Moxie was confident that he would have been able to take advantage of the chaos that would have unfolded. He would have then whisked her away. In fact, he could have even injured or killed one of the assailants. Saving the princess still wasn't that difficult. However, these people were Sky Xian experts. So he'd end up in a dire position if they found out about his whereabouts. Lei Jianhong pinched the princess's jaw and forced her to look up. He then asked her maliciously, I'll ask you for the last time. Will you still not speak? I'll have no choice but to punish the princess if she remains firm on this. Suddenly, a lofty, cold, severe and mocking laugh rang out of nowhere. It echoed cruelly inside the cave. Lei Wubei teaches such trash. What a cold-blooded senior is he? This is truly laughable. The voice hadn't yet faded when a blue light covered the area. Then, a delicate throwing knife came flying out of nothingness. It then transformed into a dreamlike azure color as it reflected everyone's face. Whoosh! The throwing knife embedded itself into the earthen wall. It unexpectedly issued the same sound as a rotten piece of logs. The three people jumped in shock. Lei Jianhong covered his chest with his hands to protect it. He then shouted loudly, Since your honored self has arrived, what do you want? Why are you in hiding? I've been waiting for you for a long time. Zhou Jianming and Fang Qiaohong grabbed the handle of their swords and drew them out. They kept their swords horizontally in front of their chests. They then looked around as if facing a very dangerous enemy. A faintly discernible voice was heard laughing. You youngsters of the younger generation truly overestimate your capabilities in challenging me. Princess Ling Meng's eyes welled up with tears since she was emotionally moved. She struggled as she asked, Senior, is that you? I beg you. I beg you. Take me to Uncle Yi. I beg you to kill these people and avenge my uncle. This underground movement, especially Lei Jianhong's loud bellowing, was clearly heard by Mr. Wen outside. This helped him in locating their position. He had been paying attention for the slightest of clues. However, Lei Jianhong's loud bellowing had provided him with the best possible orientation for locating them. He quickly arrived in front of the entrance of the cave and held his breath as he attentively listened. He could enter their hideout as long as he could find its exact location. However, Lei Jianhong and his two companions had just discovered a shocking incident. In fact, it was a terrifying, strange and an astonishing occurrence. Princess Ling Meng's delicate body had been propped up against the wall, but it was suddenly raised into the air with a whooshing sound. It then started to float in the air. It was like an arrow had suddenly been released from a bow. Lei Jianhong jumped in alarm and pounced at the princess. However, he was little late. Jun Moxie had already broken through the stone slab at the entrance with a loud bang. with the princess in his arms. The bright sunlight seeped into the cave. Lei Jianhong and the others shouted as they followed after them. Mr. Wen was pacing in front of the tree stump. He had been hesitantly thinking about destroying the surface in order to rescue Princess Ling Meng, or something even quicker. Then, he heard the loud rumbling like landslide. This was then followed by a sudden explosive sound as the entrance to the cave crumbled. Mr. Wen was caught off guard and fell to the ground. He was about to open his mouth to curse when he saw a body coming towards him. It was almost as if it had been thrown towards him. This delicate body was Princess Ling Meng's. The 3 black-clothed and masked people hurried outside and surrounded him. Then, one of them shouted, "You be **starred. You stayed hidden the last time. And you hid yourself again now. But you didn't escape, did you? I'll see how you manage to flee now." Mr. Wen had just extended his hands to catch Princess Ling Meng. He then suddenly found himself surrounded and confronted. He couldn't help but whine about his hardships. This person had framed him. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 265. I will withdraw when the task is completed. How could the experienced Mr. Wen not understand the situation he was in? He had been planning to save the princess. However, this person had then appeared very inconveniently. Moreover, it was evident that this person had the strength to rescue the princess. But he had tossed the princess into his arms as soon as he had escaped outside. But how is this man certain that I've come to save her? This hateful man. He framed me for his actions to cover his tracks. Now what do I do? This is very problematic. He had initially decided to follow them in secrecy. It would have been a case of a mantis hunting a cicada unaware of the oriole behind it. Or perhaps it was like an elderly fisherman taking advantage of the fight between 2 cranes. However, not only was the elderly fisherman unable to take the advantage, he had been made a scapegoat. This was ridiculous. His presence had been exposed. He would no longer be able to investigate the mysterious Sky Xian expert anymore. Moreover, he had been rendered incapable of capturing each of the kidnappers since the princess was in his arms now. And his plan to interrogate them individually had obviously gone down the drain as well. This had obviously turned into a big problem for him since he had no one to look for help. Hence, he was left staring at the kidnappers with a stupefied expression on his face. He analyzed the situation. I won't be able to investigate anything since these young kidnappers have spotted me. Mr. Wen was obviously much more powerful than Lei Jianhong and his companions. However, his mood was still very regretful. That mysterious man had come to save the princess, but then why would he bring her here? And why would you leave her midway? Especially with these 3 in pursuit? They could have captured her back again. Let's say your plot worked, how could you call yourself a man even if you were to succeed like this? Princess Ling Meng was still struggling and pleading non-stop. Senior, I beg you to kill these people and avenge my Uncle Yi. Princess Ling Meng hadn't been able to see the mysterious senior properly despite the fact that she had been in his arms. However, she had still felt safe. He is very much like Uncle Yi. I'll be in no danger as long as he's here. Hence, her mind had subconsciously shifted to Yi Guhan's well-being. Then, that towering person had tossed her away. She had then been caught by another person. The young girl had been born with a keen sensing ability. She could tell from his person's odor that he was the imperial palace's honored guest, the emperor's mysterious friend Mr. Wen. He has also arrived here. Now these 2 extremely skilled people can join hands. No one can escape their combined strength. They'll be able to avenge Uncle Yi. And such skilled people can also save Uncle Ye's life. Mr. Wen's arms were also warm. But they lacked that inner warmth which gives rise to a sense of security. Princess Ling Meng's thought process was wonderful. However, it was also naive and fantastical. How could life ever move according to one's wishes? The reality of this matter was as different as from her wishes as it could have been. In fact, there were no similarities between them. Mr. Wen had already been angered by the way things had turned out. Naturally, he was more than brimming with a desire to fight. He secured Princess Ling Meng with one hand, the other he positioned in front to fight with. That hand didn't bear any weapon. Yet, it looked like he held a huge cleaver in it. He seemed so formidable that he had already secured an advantage. He fiercely looked at the three individuals from his younger generation. It seemed as if he would cut them up to pieces. Mr. Wen had figured that the man had somehow managed to follow their trail without getting discovered. He was sure that the mysterious expert had saved the princess, and had then choreographed this ridiculous scene to protect his own identity. He could tell that this mysterious man didn't wish to expose his identity since it could have meant a great deal to him. Hence, this highly skilled person had shifted the blame on Mr. Wen. The person who stands up first is always considered superior. Such was the thought process of this world. Naturally, Mr. Wen was somewhat embarrassed to be the second. However, what pinched Mr. Wen the most was the fact that he hadn't been able to catch a single glimpse of that mysterious expert. He had been left with a sense of gloom and inferiority, and had hence remained silent. This was the main reason behind his enraged state of mind. He was a man of extraordinary self. But Mr. Wen had never felt so inferior in his entire life. Mr. Wen's strength was unpredictable. No one could ever consider him a mere peak sky Xian expert. In fact, even the 8 great masters wouldn't find him an easy opponent. However, Mr. Wen had been caught up in a tricky play here. But he was an experienced man, and was quickly able to assess the variables involved. He jumped out of the circle and spoke with a solemn expression on his face. "So, you guys are the Supreme Cold-Blooded Master's disciples? I am not aware of the Supreme Master Lei's well-being of late. And I certainly don't know how my Tianxiang Empire has offended the Supreme Master Lei. What could have we possibly done for him to take an action such as this, sending his disciples to capture our imperial princess? Has the honored senior forgotten the treaty we have as allies?" "Supreme Master? What do you speak of, old man? Come here and die by your father's hands." Lei Jianhong denied and abused. Though he was rather amazed by these turn of events. Who is this old man? His strength is barely at the peak sky Xian realm. He's alone, and surrounded by enemies on all sides, but he's so calm in this situation. His strength is nowhere near my father's, and what's more, he even knows about the Treaty of Alliance that was signed all those years ago. How did such a high-level personality arrive here at this critical juncture? This matter just got harder to get over with. However, this old B***starred Xian level must be very high. He had managed to kill 4 of my brother disciples with those throwing knives. But such an enmity cannot be recompensed very easily. Old fool, have the guts to tell us your name. We have a deep-seated blood feud with you, and it is important to settle that debt." Mr. Wen snorted. He knew that he had been unjustly implicated. He was aware that it wouldn't be worthwhile to explain his true status to these argumentative youngsters. And even if he did try to explain, would he be able to do it properly? But he was angered by the rude manner in which Lei Jianhong spoke to him. He then suddenly flew towards Lei Jianhong and hit his face hard. Then, he shouted, "You're not fit to know this old man's name. You youngsters have ruined Lei Wu Bei's reputation. Lei Wubei won't be able to save you from my wrath if you violate the alliance treaty again, not even if you're his own flesh. Now get lost. His feet left the ground once he finished speaking. He was still facing Lei Jianhong and his companions, and was still holding the princess's body. Then, he slowly started to float backwards and deeper into the lush woods. But he didn't bump into a single tree. It seemed like he had eyes at the back of his head. It even looked as if he was riding a cloud. However, they heard his faint voice again. Tell Lei Wubei that the old man you spoke to is called Wen. Be sure to tell him properly so that he understands it clearly. Lei Jianhong and the others couldn't help but be overwhelmed with shock as they looked at each other. Zhou Jianming shouted angrily after a good while had passed. That old B***starred kills 4 of my brothers. And yet he shamelessly talks big. We must settle this debt. We'll see where this B***starred escapes to when the master arrives. Lei Jianhong and Fang Piaohong agreed in unison. Their enemy's skills were extraordinary. There was no way those 3 could have dealt with him by themselves. Therefore, they were left with no option but to give up on fighting him at that point, even if they did so unwillingly. They could just wait for their master's arrival, and then make a plan. Young Master Jun whistled as he slowly and leisurely returned to his tethered horse. The strong horse freed itself, and Jun Moxie mounted it. The young Master Jun felt rather proud of his achievement. He raised his whip to urge his horse to return home. He had quickly laid out the whole plan when he had realized that the mysterious expert was also following Lei Jianhong's trail. He knew that no one could see him once he'd initiate the yin-yang escape. First, come to find me. Then you dogs can fight each other. This uncle doesn't have free time to play with you. This is good. I've saved Princess Ling Meng without exposing my identity. I've completed my task with above satisfactory rating. The princess should thank me by clapping her hands. He returned home to find Jun Wuyi anxiously waiting for his arrival. What? But why? Yi Gu Han's condition had become so bad that he could stop breathing any moment. Even asking the solitary falcon to transfer his xian qi had been useless. Even the so-called pure xian qi didn't have any effect on Yi Gu Han's condition. Even an excess of xian qi had been useless in his case, because he lacked the vitality needed to produce flesh and blood. Even solitary falcon was unable to help. He didn't have any means to. The solitary falcon had transferred a lot of pure and high-level xian qi into Yi Gu Han without knowing if the man was capable of supporting it. Everyone stood up as Jun Moxie walked in. His face immediately deflated as they asked, "Did you find the princess?" Jun Moxie shook his head listlessly as he sat down on a chair. He then drank some tea and complained, "You thought too highly of me. Those people had captured her and had escaped a long while ago. How would I be able to find her? I couldn't." Jun Wuyi sighed and kept quiet. Dugu Xiao Yi wanted to say something but remained shut since Sun Xiao Mei took her small hand and pinched it. But solitary falcon snorted and said, "This old man has squandered a lot of xian qi by pouring it into his man. I will waste no more since the Jun kid has returned. This old man shall return to his cultivation." Then, he suddenly left without any indication. He seemed very carefree as he left. Dugu Xiao Yi's lips twitched. This old man is a quack. He just checked the pulse and nothing else. How could your Jun family invite in such a swindler? What a waste of food. The solitary falcon had reached the door. He staggered when he heard this line. In fact, he almost collapsed. He snorted angrily. What is wrong with this little girl? This injured boy couldn't have lasted if it weren't for this old man's assistance. He wouldn't have survived till this scheming Jun brat returned unless this old man had poured his xian qi and replenished his life force. However, the solitary falcon couldn't remain angry after he looked at that little girl's pretty face. He then waved his sleeves and disappeared without a trace. Jun Moxie and Jun Wuyi's expression turned strange. They would have noisily laughed out if it weren't for Yi Gu Han lying at the doors of death. Sun Xiao Mei, the Sun family's eldest daughter, had more experience and knowledge than the other little girl. She couldn't completely understand solitary falcon's origins. But she could tell that this person was someone very extraordinary by just looking at how he had prolonged the near-dead Yi Gu Han's life by transferring his pure qi until now. She could tell that this seemingly powerful expert was quite smart as well, since he had restrained his temper when he was provoked by a naive and inexperienced girl. The consequences could have been very serious if he had lost his cool. Moxie, hurry up and take a look at little Yi. His condition is quite serious, Jun Wuyi said. Jun Moxie cleared his throat and sat down beside the injured man. To be honest, he didn't like Yi Gu Han. And similarly, Yi Gu Han didn't like the debauchee of the Jun family. However, he would save the man's life since he had promised his uncle. Either don't try saving him or revive him completely. This was Hitman Jun's standard behavior. Moreover, Yi Gu Han was an iron-boned warrior. And a good man. There was no harm in saving him. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 266. Jun Family's Ancestral Teachings. Dr. Jun Moxie took Yi Gu Han's hand and quickly poured pure xian qi into his body. Yi Gu Han coughed feebly. It seemed as if he was being choked. Thin wisps of blood started to drip from the corners of his mouth. Not good. Jun Moxie shook his head and frowned. He raised his head to look at Jun Wuyi. This is a big problem. And the expenses incurred in saving him would be a lot. I'm afraid the expenses will be very huge, extremely huge. He then looked at Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei. You two. Haven't you been through a lot already? Hurry up and go over there. Rest for a while. When he mentioned over there, he obviously meant Guanqing Han's courtyard. Jun Wuyi heard this and realized that he'd need to lend a hand in mediating the situation. Ni Xiao Yi, Ni Xiao Mei, try and find Sister Qing Han. Take some rest. Okay? We both are here. So you needn't worry. This is not that serious. I have informed your families. And someone will soon come to take you home. Little Yi is from your older generation, but he is a man. Your presence will pose a problem for Moxie's effort in healing him. Dugu Xiao Yi pouted since she didn't feel very pleased with this. She agreed that third Uncle Jun was being very reasonable, but this made her feel like an outsider. The little girl then turned her waist. She snorted to show her dissatisfaction and refused to leave. However, she was pulled away by Sun Xiao Mei. The Sun family's eldest daughter was quite perceptive. She had long realized that the uncle-nephew duo had a secret language for communication when there was an inconvenient entity present in their midst. You really couldn't find the princess? Jun Wuyi snorted and smiled. Would you have returned if you hadn't found her? Young fellow. You think I don't know you, boy? You either don't make a promise, or you complete the task if you make one. Why do you ask when you know? Jun Moxie continued to pour aura into Yi Gu Han's body, and started to rectify the placement of his bones. He then let out a helpless sigh. Third uncle. The princess hates me. But I can't blame her since I act like a degenerate. Yi Gu Han may be cold, proud and aloof, but he's a good man. Jun Xie's voice became serious as he continued. Be that as it may, our decision to help them may not necessarily have been the correct one. In fact, we shouldn't have saved them. Third uncle, you must be aware that our Jun family is not very stable at the moment, yet, we have brought another layer of crisis upon ourselves. I've already made arrangements for this matter, and I'm convinced that no one will doubt my involvement. But I may have left a few tiny clues. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei's presence can prove to be a huge risk as well. In fact, it can be a big giveaway. Secondly, you and I know that this man's position is quite sensitive. That could cause a rebellion against us later, that could lead to more problems. Jun Xie looked at Jun Wuyi sternly. Third uncle, you didn't think this matter through. This matter could associate the Jun family with this man. That may not be a good thing. I've already thought over the things you speak of. Jun Wuyi returned Jun Xie's gaze in a profound manner and spoke in a dignified voice. You must be aware that your dad, your second uncle, and I had grown up and trained with several people. There used to be 19 of us. However, there's just Yi Gu Han, the three brothers of the Dugu family, Murong families Murong Chenglong and me. Just the 6 of us remain. Jun Wuyi sighed. Now in regards to today's matter, I know that saving Yi Gu Han will make His Majesty uncomfortable. However, he will only feel uncomfortable and nothing more. He has been uncomfortable with Yi Gu Han for the past 10 years. So it's not like this is the first time, but how will I face my 13 brothers in the other world if I change my decision now? Even your great-grandfather wouldn't forgive me. And even if the unlikely happens and your great-grandfather forgives me, I won't be able to live with myself after self-introspection. Therefore, I will continue with my efforts to save him. Etch this into your heart. Moxie Jun never describes himself as a man with a noble character. We're forever in gratitude. Men are born to act when something is not right. Men set such matters straight. Our Jun family's descendants have persevered for a long time with this pride. And this has always been the case. Your great-great-grandfather, that is, your grandfather's grandfather, was just a common blacksmith. However, he imparted a very important lesson to my grandfather when he was about to die. Jun Wuyi's voice became solemn. What did my great-great-grandfather teach? Jun Moxie was somewhat inquisitive. Having balls does not make you a man. It is the incomparably indomitable spirit which does. Jun Wuyi slowly declared these 15 words. He had no choice but to relay these teachings, even though the wording was quite vulgar and didn't embellish the teachings in any way. Having balls does not make you a man. It is the incomparably indomitable spirit which does. Jun Moxie muttered these lines for a while. Initially, he wanted to laugh. But then he realized that these words were turning more and more to his liking. The great-great-grandfather taught well. Jun Moxie cheered loudly and became somewhat excited. He then said, "It seems that this ancestor wasn't even lacking at the death's door. He was still a real man." Correct. Innumerable people have P***N's under their keys on this earth. But real men are very few. Man? What is a man? Jun Wuyi looked at his nephew with a hawk-like expression. A man is someone who stands tall. He has a will of iron and a loyal heart. He is a man of character with an incomparably indomitable spirit. Jun Moxie laughed loud as he spoke this in a carefree manner. The sentence he had spoken had actually broadened his mind. It relieved him of any worry. Correct. If a man is a coward, is overcautious and is too fond of life, and if he fears death, he cannot be considered a real man, not even if he takes 100 wives and fathers 800 children. Jun Xie laughed heartily. A will of iron, and a loyal heart. A man of character with an incomparably indomitable spirit. Well said. I merely admire the last 8 words of this ancestor's teachings. Jun Moxie laughed in a carefree manner. This line is very much to my liking. It feels like a God has penned it to my liking. I can use these 8 words in my conduct, and be worthy of my ancestor's name. Jun Xie smiled. Correct. His words may seem vulgar and uncultured, but they have a magnanimous and open-minded message inside. His words are truly great. To continue in one's own way and do what the heart desires, it is truly a great way to live. Jun Moxie felt very happy inside. These teachings seem like they were custom-made for me. You prefer to interpret those words in that manner, but I do it differently. Perhaps this is the major difference between our natures. And that is probably why we conduct ourselves very differently in public. Jun Xie smiled slowly. An incomparably indomitable spirit. I comprehend those 4 words, thus it is important to live in an upright manner, regardless of the anything. We first need to harbor a clear conscience, and only then can we have an indomitable spirit. Death isn't worth fearing. Simply wishing for wealth and prosperity isn't enough. Wealth must be attained in a wise and just manner while maintaining a clear conscience. Jun Xie declared in a decisive and resolute manner. Your great-great-grandfather's wishes were in this order: first do good and become a good man, then have a clear conscience. These 2 prerequisites must be adhered to. Only then will a man be able to speak in a bold manner with justice on his side in every situation. Jun Xie smiled in a profound manner after he finished describing the teachings. Did you understand our ancestors' teachings clearly? Moxie? Do you understand the reason behind my decision to help them? Yes, third uncle. I understand. Jun Moxie replied respectfully. First, you choose the correct path. Then you utilized your capabilities to do what your heart desires. Good. Jun Xie felt very pleased. However, he hadn't listened properly. His understanding and Jun Moxie's understanding weren't the same. In fact, they were completely different. Jun Moxie had said find a correct path, and then live according to one's own wishes. Whereas, Jun Xie had referred to the correct way of living, and having a clear conscience. These 2 things were entirely different. In fact, these 2 ideologies clashed with each other, and weren't alluding to the same meaning in any way. Jun Moxie hadn't ceased pouring pure aura into Yi Guhan, and was still operating the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. However, there wasn't enough aura in the mortal world to imbue Yi Guhan with. He was still unconscious even though his breathing had become somewhat stable. But this was the most Jun Moxie could do for now. He could at most make Yi Guhan persist in the world of the living. However, Jun Moxie was powerless when it came to reviving Yi Guhan completely, or even making the situation better than it was. Then, someone informed that General Dugu had arrived with his bodyguard. Minister's son had also accompanied them. Jun Xie hastily left to make the preparations to welcome his visitors. Dugu Wudi and Minister's son were about to enter the Jun residence when they heard the announcement that declared Princess Ling Meng's arrival. Mr. Wen had taken Princess Ling Meng back to the imperial palace. However, she had then created a ruckus, and had demanded that she gets to see Yi Guhan. Her demands to see her uncle Yi were so fierce that the emperor himself had to go and console her. But she became even more defiant when the emperor tried to calm her down. Moreover, her attitude turned cold and distant towards him. This continued for a while, but then the emperor was forced to meet her demands. The princess made several inquiries regarding Yi Guhan's whereabouts after she left the imperial palace. She was eventually informed that the third master of the Jun family, Jun Xie, had rescued Yi Han. Princess Ling Meng was overjoyed to hear this news, and immediately made way for the Jun residence. Behind Princess Ling Meng were three panting old men. Their chief was recognized as the foremost medical expert in the city Fang Huisheng. They were followed by the imperial bodyguards who were energetically carrying the three experts' medical equipment. Uncle Yi. Princess Ling Meng charged into the Jun family's residence. In fact, she ran inside as if no one else existed in her eyes. She made her way to Jun Xie and asked, "Third Uncle Jun, what about my Uncle Yi? Where is he?" She was unaware that she was practically shouting, and her mannerism would be considered as unreasonable by most people. Jun Xie forced a smile and shook his head. The princess nearly fell down. It seemed as if she had stumbled upon a hole in the ground. Then, she asked in a trembling voice, "Is he already?" The princess shouldn't make such guesses. His condition isn't good, but Yi Han is still somehow alive. You needn't worry. I found him a place in Mo Xie's courtyard. I don't intend to conceal Yi Han's health from the princess. He is stable for now, but his condition is not good. Jun Xie told her this in advance since he believed that she would need to be mentally prepared when she saw him. The third master Jun only acted in this manner since she was the emperor's daughter, and it was necessary for her to act gracefully since she was the princess of an empire. It wouldn't suit her to reveal her true emotions of care and nervousness towards Yi Han. And certainly not in such a desperate manner. This fiery little girl is very emotional and righteous. He had seen the manner in which the three princes had fought amongst themselves. However, he now saw the contrasting manner in which this princess treated Yi Han. Jun Xie couldn't help but think of her to be a good person. They reached Yi Han's bed. The three old men carefully examined the injured man. Then, Fang Huisheng stood up and helplessly shook his head as he stammered, "Princess, Mr. Yi has received serious injuries on his body in this battle. He has also suffered many internal injuries. And these injuries are in his fatal regions. We could have dealt this with some difficulty, but his circumstances have been made worse due to extreme blood loss. The human body can recuperate if half of its blood has been lost. However, it is extremely difficult to heal someone who has lost over 1/3 of their blood. No medicinal dan can save him. In fact, he should have been dead by now. Mr. Yi Han has only survived this long because his body was imbued with pure Xian Qi by two very powerful people. But this extremely pure Xian Qi won't be able to sustain his body for very long. Things will start to get worse after some time passes. We advise the princess to make preparations for the funeral ceremony in advance." It turned out that their formidable reputation as doctors hadn't been without reason. They had already deduced Yi Han's present situation, and the inevitability of his fate. In fact, they had even figured that his body was being supported by Xian Qi from two very powerful experts. It was a pity that these three distinguished individuals weren't capable of saving his life. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 267. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. What? Are you saying that Uncle Ye's condition is hopeless? I don't believe that. Imperial physicians, I beg you, please find a solution. The princess's delicate body and pretty face became ghostly white when she heard the diagnosis of the three distinguished experts. She choked, and it seemed as if her small mouth was filled with blood. Her expression had become incomparably dull. However, she wasn't willing to give up. Therefore, she repeatedly begged the head of the three experts, Fang Huisheng, to find a solution. Princess, please allow me report, besides suffering tremendous blood loss, Mr. Yi has also suffered serious physical injuries. The bones in his ribs are broken. His 5 vital internal organs have been severely damaged, and he has suffered no less than 10 serious internal injuries. This isn't pleasant to hear, but there isn't the least bit of a chance to save Yi Gu Han. Fang Huisheng's tone was extremely serious as he explained. Even a supernatural entity would find themselves powerless in front of such a case. We can support him for a little while, and you can get other people's opinions until you're satisfied about the rarity of his case. Princess Ling Meng couldn't support her body anymore. She trembled for a few moments, and then fell down. Fang Huisheng sighed and shook his head along with the other 2 physicians. He didn't wish to trouble the princess. So, he put his medical equipment in order and left. Uncle Yi. Princess Ling Meng muttered absent-mindedly. The beauty of her face could bring down a nation. However, its complexion was the same as the near-dead Yi Gu Han at the moment. It seemed from Dugu Wudi's face that he couldn't bear it anymore. He sighed and shook his head. He didn't wish to disturb the 2 either. Therefore, he left the courtyard and made his way towards the Jun family's main hall. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei remained in the courtyard to keep Princess Ling Meng company. They were afraid that another mishap might happen to their sister. Sun Xiao Mei couldn't see the heartbroken princess. She hesitated for a moment, but was unable to bear it any longer. She then quietly and quickly whispered a line into Princess Ling Meng's ear. Jun Moxie can save Mr. Yi. Sun Xiao Mei wasn't a beautiful-looking woman. However, she was very talented and extremely intelligent. Her wisdom was comparable to that of Li Yuran. She had heard the conversation between Jun Moxie and Jun Wu Yi, and had faintly sensed that Jun Moxie might be able to save Yi Gu Han. However, she couldn't understand why Jun Moxie wouldn't undertake that task. Moreover, she had a soft spot for the princess. Sun Xiao Mei couldn't help but feel her heart soften when she saw Jun Moxie keeping his mouth shut despite the manner in which the princess was grieving. Hence, she decided to inform Princess Ling Meng about Jun Moxie's capability. The princess believed the information that was given her good sister, without doubting a word of it. She didn't have any faith in Jun Moxie. However, she could never doubt Sun Xiao Mei. The princess would regard this as an absurdity under normal circumstances. However, she had no choice at the moment. She would grasp firmly at any straw she could find, just in case it turned out be the one and only way to save Yi Gu Han's life. Therefore, she would necessarily give this a try, even if the chances of saving him with this method were negligible. I must save Uncle Ye's life at any cost. Everyone had already left. However, Jun Moxie had still here. This small courtyard was his residence. And the injured Yi Gu Han seemed to have taken control of his nest. In fact, Yi Gu Han was lying on his bed. How could Jun Moxie abandon his own lair? That was the only reason why he had stayed behind. Jun Moxie was sitting cross-legged on the only chair in his room. His eyes were closed. The young Master Jun was considering things. I must help Yi Gu Han since I've promised third uncle that I'll save him. However, his condition is genuinely difficult to deal with. So, how do I go about the healing process? Yi Gu Han had lost a lot of blood, and that was a huge problem for those 3 medical experts. However, this wasn't an issue for the young Master Jun since his mind had retained the medical knowledge of his previous life. The issue of blood transfusion wouldn't be a problem with Jun Moxie's power and skill as long as he could find someone with the required blood type. He could then assist in the blood transfer with his innate spiritual talent. Therefore, he didn't consider that angle to be a big problem. Jun Moxie was confident that he could cure the internal wounds that had been made by the swords as well. He had a treasure trove of medical ingredients, and they had nourishing spiritual properties. This would assist in the healing process. Ye Gu Han's life wouldn't be very inconvenient even if he had only one arm remaining post his recovery, comparatively. However, the man's ribs were the genuine problem. His condition was very serious in that regard, and it was also a rare occurrence. Shockingly, 15 of his ribs were broken in multiple places. His chest had sunken inwards due to this. In fact, his ribs were broken in about 35 to 45 places. This is a very difficult problem. This problem doesn't seem to have any solution. It wouldn't have been a problem if it were a simple bone injury. The injury would have slowly healed as long as he could have borne the pain. However, his life force is very weak at the moment. And he suffered so many internal and external injuries. Therefore, connecting the bones would result in losing Ye Gu Han. It would rid him of his small chance of survival as well. Ye Gu Han had very little life force remaining in his body. And most of the Xian Qi in his body was foreign to it. The solitary falcon and Jun Moxie had imbued his body with a lot of pure and high-level Xian Qi. However, even that had reached the peak of its limit. Reapplying this method wouldn't be able to support him during the operation. However, if I treat the flesh wounds first, and then replenish the Xian Qi inside of him, he might have enough life left in him to bear the burden of the mending bones for some time, though I reckon that Ye Gu Han's bones have been deformed for good. Jun Moxie frowned. His eyes were still closed. He thought hard on this muddy puzzle, but couldn't find a single clue to solve it. It is a pity that this world doesn't have anesthetics. Ye Gu Han's treatment wouldn't be so difficult if I had some anesthetics. Hold on, anesthetics? Jun Moxie suddenly became excited, and firmly slapped his thighs. He then opened his eyes in astonishment because his thigh didn't feel his hand when he had slapped it. His hand obviously felt the clap, but the thigh didn't feel this slap. This was strange. He opened his eyes. The young Master Jun saw Princess Ling Meng covering her face with her hand. A few teardrops had streamed for her eyes. Her pretty face had 5 crisp and red finger marks on it, and had started to swell. Shockingly, the palm had struck the princess's face. He had landed an incomparably hard slap on her face. What are you doing? Why are you crouching like that? Did you walk over here like a ghost? Couldn't you have made some noise? I didn't know. Do you like to scare other people to death? Jun Moxie's head burst with an ache. He had been thinking hard and had set his mind on solving that problem. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he didn't notice when the princess came over. He had accidentally slapped a beautiful face instead of his thighs. And that too, the beautiful face of a princess. His luck with women was truly hopeless. The princess was clearly in pain and her small face had started to smolder. But contrary to the young Master Jun's expectations, she didn't seem the least bit angry. In fact, her eyes seemed to be begging him. She then opened her mouth to ask, "This. I plead, young Master Jun, you save my Uncle Yi. Okay?" Jun Moxie was shocked by the look on her face. Then, he understood what was happening, and became very angry. His expression became that of an acute lightning. Like point of a spear. His gaze quickly turned towards Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei. And his knife-like stare left them with a desire to curl up and shiver. This little girl had quite some tolerance. However, The heart of the Sun family's eldest daughter quivered since this accident had been caused by her. She hadn't crossed paths with Jun Moxie very often. But it was very clear from the Jun debauchee's behavior that he would retaliate for today's matter, right? She hoped that his reprisals wouldn't be too harsh since she was Fatty's fiancé. Save him? How can I save him? The Empire's top 3 medical experts couldn't do anything. So what can a debauchee like me do? Your Majesty, you have sought the wrong man. This joke of yours is not funny. It's really not funny. Jun Moxie's nostrils flared as he snorted. His mind had been completely engrossed with how to save Ye Gu Han's life. However, he had given up on that idea now. This had nothing to do with the princess. If I wanted to save someone, I would save them even if countless people tried to stop me. However, Princess Ling Meng had no idea about my skills. Yet she has just come to ask me this favor. It must have been either Dugu Xiao Yi or Sun Xiao Mei who told her. Though I don't think the little girl would have divulged that information. So that leaves Sun Xiao Mei, the Sun family's eldest daughter. Jun Moxie felt somewhat betrayed by this. This feeling transformed his good mood into an angry one, that too in just a split second. A betrayal in Jun Moxie's eyes was a betrayal indeed. There was one thing that Jun Moxie couldn't accept: people threatening him. And Jun Moxie had always detested people who had a tendency for betrayal. Princess Ling Meng couldn't help but feel despair after listening to Jun Moxie's cold and detached answer. She suddenly gnashed her teeth, and her eyes revealed a determined expression. She slowly stood up until she was standing straight in front of the young Master Jun. Then, she suddenly went down on her knees. She knelt firmly on her knees. I beg you, please save my Uncle Yi. I beg you, I beg you, I beg you. Princess Ling Meng prostrated herself. The expression on her face was reckless and crazy, but it displayed inexhaustible distress. My Uncle Yi has suffered countless grievances because of my willfulness. He has suffered so much harm because I'm not sensible. There is nothing I can do to repay him. But he lies dying now, and I am willing to sacrifice everything for his life. Jun Moxie, I bow before you. Princess Ling Meng dropped heavily to the ground. There was a loud boom, which resonated. This was proof that she had exerted all of her energy to kowtow in front of him. This was not at all a frivolous endeavor. Dugu Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei were emotionally moved. What noble behavior from a country's princess! She had knelt resolutely in front of a vassal, and was begging him, just to save the life of her bodyguard. The imperial family has been fighting for power since ancient times. There've surely been many people in that family who were emotional and just. However, Princess Ling Meng's actions were unprecedented. The royalty must behave within the scope of the royal dignity. But Princess Ling Meng had ignored all of it. The princess had kneeled in front of Jun Moxie like she was kneeling in front of a highly respected senior. Anybody could make out the princess's determination by the manner in which had knelt. No matter what the cost, or the chances of success. No matter how nonsensical the hope is, she wouldn't hesitate. Jun Moxie's outer appearance was as calm as the surface of still water. But he was badly shaken on the inside. He had never expected Princess Ling Meng to take such a step for Ye Gu Han. Dugu Xiao Yi took a huge stride forward as she tearfully said, "****. Why do you hesitate? The princess is kneeling in front of you and begging. What more do you want? Hurry up and do something if you can help. Is us two kneeling in front of you not enough?" Jun Moxie's expression was cold as he extended his hand and pushed Dugu Xiao Yi aside. He then looked at Princess Ling Meng in an indifferent manner. Then, he spoke without showing any trace of emotion. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Sun Xiaomei's entire body trembled. She had quickly figured everything out. She realized that she had made an unforgivable mistake by informing the princess about Jun Moxie's abilities. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 268. Blood Oath. Forget about other matters. She hadn't even taken Jun Moxie's temperament into consideration. He is very different from other people. This man never brings himself out in the open for anyone. No is an exception to that rule. He always does things his own way. She had only intended to help Princess Ling Meng and give her hope. However, that had angered Jun Moxie. This had shattered any hope of saving Ye Gu Han's life. The princess and Ye Gu Han's political position was very sensitive. Moreover, the Jun family circumstances weren't very good either. This was driving Jun Moxie to forego the task of saving the man's life. Why? What else do you want me to do? What in the world do you want from me? You just say it. I give you my word. I'll give you anything you ask. Princess Ling Meng was still kneeling on the ground in despair. She had a vacant expression on her face. However, she still clung to her last hope as she asked Jun Moxie. Nothing you offer will make any difference. I don't trust you. Jun Moxie raised his head and looked up at the sky. He let out a deep sigh. He then spoke in a resolute manner. Princess, I really wish to save him, but you must be aware of our Jun family situation. To say that it is precarious would be an understatement. And if I could cure conditions that even the 3 foremost doctors of the city weren't able to, what would it mean? Jun Moxie took a deep breath. Right now, people can only suspect and be suspicious of me. However, it will become a reality if I manage to save Ye Gu Han's life. Princess, Ye Gu Han is one of the most taboo names to His Majesty the Emperor. Reviving him would tantamount to offending the Emperor. This single matter concerns the lives of thousands of Jun family members and tens of thousands of our faction's followers. In such circumstances, Princess, don't you think that sacrificing Ye Gu Han's life is a good idea? Would the princess do it differently if she were in my place? How can you expect me to trust you? The Tian family has never been loyal to anyone. Doesn't the princess know that? Jun Moxie said heavily. I can pledge to guard your secret. You just asked how you can believe me, how can I? Princess Ling Meng hung her head dispiritedly. She knew that no pledge she would make would be binding enough. She didn't know how to explain that her promises would be different from her family's. So, she kept quiet for a while. Dugu Xiao bit her lip. It seemed that she wanted to say something. However, she eventually decided to remain silent. Sun Xiaomei sighed inside her heart. The young Master Jun's words were reasonable. She knew that she would have ignored any pleas for assistance in this situation as well. She had realized just how childish and unwise her actions had been. The current emperor is very wise. But one of his few undeniable faults is that he's too suspicious. Sun Xiaomei was lost in her thoughts. Then, she saw the princess suddenly rise to her feet. Her delicate body changed directions, and then she knelt down again. Princess Ling Meng then bit her lips very hard, and a wisp of blood started to flow down from the corner of her mouth. The blood streamed down her face and started to drip on the ground. She hesitated for a moment. Then, she eventually placed her left hand upon her chest. She then spoke in a soft yet resolute tone. The heavens above and the earth below, the gods of this world and the successive generations of my ancestors, listen to my oath. I, Ling Meng, hereby swear. She paused for a moment, and her face suddenly twisted. She then continued. If Jun Moxie is able to save my uncle Ye's life, then I Ling Meng vow that I'll return to the palace and spare no efforts to demand from my father that I be married to Jun Moxie. Whether a wife or a concubine, I'll comply to his wishes. I'll never complain. I'll spend this life being the most loyal woman to Jun Moxie. I will keep my mouth sealed regarding all his secrets, and I will not divulge a single thing to anyone else. If it seems that I have reneged on this oath, may my whole family die. And may my ancestors never find any peace. Ling Meng herself shall be punished by being hacked into pieces. Then being thunderstruck 5 times, none of my descendants shall be allowed to continue in this world. I take this blood oath before the heaven and earth and the gods of this world. The princess turned her hand after she finished speaking. She held a delicate throwing knife in it. The knife flashed like lightning as she moved it towards her arm, and slashed it. She didn't even flinch as she did this. The blood gushed out like a fountain. The princess then drew a circle in front of her with her own blood. Then, she knelt and tapped her head right at the center of that bloody circle. Her luxuriant and water-like hair scattered onto the ground. She didn't raise her head for a long time. With heaven and earth as witness, and in the name of the gods and ancestors, her soul, and her blood, had gone into this oath. This was the most sacred and also the most malicious oath in the Xian continent. No one would ever dare to abandon this oath. And Princess Ling Meng had already knocked her head in the very center of the bloody circle. The oath had been sealed. It was incommutable in that life. Dugu Xiao Yi cried out in alarm. She glared as her small hand covered her mouth, while her eyes quickly filled with tears. Princess Ling Meng got up. Her face was covered with tears, but she didn't weep. She then faced Jun Moxie and then spoke. Maybe I've convinced you now. Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie was stunned speechless. The young Master Jun had never thought that the princess would take such an oath, not even in his dreams. What are you saying? Jun Moxie had previously decided to save Yi Guhan. However, he wasn't able to start the procedure due to some difficult problems. Then, the sudden arrival of Princess Ling Meng coupled with her special identity had escalated the situation further. Otherwise, he would have saved Yi Guhan in secret, and fronted the non-existent, mysterious expert. A few people may have doubted it, but it wouldn't have been a huge hindrance. However, he had never taken into account that the princess would immediately make her way to his residence after being returned to the imperial palace by that man. Moreover, she had brought 3 imperial physicians with her. And those 3 were the top medical experts in Tianxiang City. This mix of so many people had killed Jun Moxie's plan. He wouldn't be able to save the man even if he capable of doing it, since the emperor may find out about his talents if the princess were to leak any of his secrets to his majesty's ears. The young Master Jun's skills could have easily brought upon his doom. First, his grandfather had taken undue advantage of the Jun family's influence to commit a purge. Then, his uncle's injuries had mysteriously healed. This was then followed the mysterious emergence of the aristocratic hall. Any logical interpretation of these facts would point in the Jun family's direction, and heads would start to roll. Therefore, Jun Moxie had resolutely refused to treat Yi Guhan. However, Princess Ling Meng had made that blood oath to gain Jun Moxie's trust. She had made this oath to mediate the circumstances between herself and Jun Moxie. The princess's body trembled. There was a fierce expression on her face as she looked at Jun Moxie. She was aware that Jun Moxie had endlessly nagged his grandfather to take an offer for his marriage to the imperial princess a few years ago. However, She had then rejected him, and her father had also lost interest in the Jun family. The whole matter had fizzled out sometime later. Princess Ling Meng's judgment had been clouded by the present circumstances. She hadn't paid careful attention to Jun Moxie's words. She had heard him speak, "I don't trust you," and had interpreted it to be a demand for her loyalty by marriage. This has obscurely revealed this debauchee's real aim. However, I fear that he won't save my Uncle Ye's life if I don't agree to his condition. Am I only to look on helplessly as Uncle Ye leaves the mortal realm? Princess Ling Meng had reached an impossible conclusion after she had searched her soul. Therefore, she had decided to make this blood oath after some hesitation. I will sacrifice the rest of my life as long as Uncle Ye survives. It's not much of a sacrifice, is it? Anyway, who is to say that my father won't just use my marriage as a means to rope in a minister in the future? There's no guarantee that I'll ever be allowed to marry by my own choice. In fact, he may just send me to Jun Moxie since he's quite influential. Uncle Ye could do that much to save my life. Can't I even do this much for him? Therefore, Princess Ling Meng had eventually made this resolute decision. The throwing knife, covered with her own blood, was still in her hand. However, the princess's mind was ice cold. What else do you want now? Tell me what you want. However, she was merely in a trance. Princess Ling Meng looked at Jun Moxie. And Jun Moxie looked at the princess. Their thoughts were a mess. Sun Xiao Mei could understand their thoughts. And her eyes were wide open in shock. Suddenly, Dugu Xiao Yi let out a loud sob in the midst of this silence. Then, she started to weep. She was completely heartbroken. Boo-hoo, brother Moxie. I liked him first, and yet you suddenly took that oath without speaking to me first. You stole him. No way. Sister didn't even discuss this with me. You're a cheat. Dugu Xiao Yi felt wronged. She felt very sad. And when she looked at those two silently staring at each other, she thought they were looking at each other lovingly. Hence, she couldn't help but cry. Dugu Xiao Yi was dazzled in reality. She was just imagining things like Princess Ling Meng. There was nothing more to it. What she felt as loving gaze between two people was actually Jun Moxie feeling stunned and panicky. There was a hint of embarrassment in his body language, and he was having a tough time in restraining his anger. And the princess was tragic over the sacrifice she had just made. This gaze they shared, and that of two lovers, are two completely different things. Fine. I promise you. I will save him. Jun Moxie took a deep breath. However, I don't accept your oath. You and I aren't a fit match. Therefore, even speaking of marriage between us is absurd. Yi Gu Han will have to stay here for a long time. I can only restore his health very slowly. And I can't guarantee the extent of his recovery. You understand what I mean? I can save him or I can kill him. You took that lousy oath. Even if you had to take an oath, it should have been about not opening your mouth. I could have stuck to my original idea by fronting the story about the mysterious master saving Yi Gu Han's life. And you would have been the perfect tool to make the world believe it. Just that much would have been enough. But you had to go and add that part about marrying me or become my concubine. And then abiding by my desires. What a shitty oath. Bah! Even if you wish to marry me. I don't wish to marry you. I have no intention to do so. You aren't that beautiful. Can you even compare to that little girl? And can you even compare to that little girl from the Silver Blizzard City? No matter what sort of a woman she is, she has the upper hand in this regard. Your beauty is worth a fart to me. However, Jun Moxie had been stunned by the severity of the oath the princess had taken. He was shocked by the sacrifice she was willing to make for Yi Guhan. In fact, he was certain that he would have never taken such a tough decision if he were to be in her shoes. Once a blood oath is taken, it cannot be changed even if you don't accept it. This is a well-known fact. Princess Ling Meng's heart was filled with joy when she heard that he had agreed to save Yi Guhan. But she continued calmly, I just hope that the truth of this matter is never known to my uncle Yi. I can only guarantee my utmost effort in this matter. Jun Moxie sighed with numbness. What is this? Why does it feel like I've forced an honest girl into selling her body? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 269. Is it him? Yi Guhan's injury is very serious. I'll try my best, but I'm not sure if I can fully cure him. Also, his right hand is broken beyond repair. Therefore, he will find it difficult to hold his sword with it, even if his health is otherwise restored. His body would take 70 to 80 days for a recovery. Therefore, you should make some false announcements to avoid future trouble for him. You will have to announce to the world that Yi Guhan has died due to his injuries. And, it's better that you go through me when you wish to meet him in the future. And I'll make the required adjustments. You don't have a problem with that, right? Princess Ling Meng bit her lip and nodded. She knew perfectly well what Jun Moxie meant when he said, avoid future troubles. These two had developed a tacit understanding by now. They didn't need to explain their words anymore. Princess Ling Meng sighed when saw debauchee weeping. She then walked over to the little girl, fished out a handkerchief from her clothes, and softly wiped debauchee's tears. Silly little sister. I won't compete with you. Is it possible that we sisters would have such a cruel fate? You, just for this guy, is he worth it? She was going to say, debauchee, but then she recalled her oath and didn't say it. The sound of debauchee's crying abated somewhat. She then opened her tear-filled eyes. Really? But you, just a moment ago. That is true. However, I did it because I had no other choice. Princess Ling Meng smiled gently. The princess was almost the same age as the little girl. However, she seemed so much more mature all of a sudden. I will ask my father to get me married to Jun Moxie so I can complete my oath. But only after you do the good deed of marrying him first. I promise that this is only to adhere to my oath and nothing more. Is it still unacceptable? Debauchee blushed. Her tears had turned into a smile. She hummed for a moment and then said, You are elder to me, so you first. Though she had spoken these words, but anyone could tell that she felt insecure. Jun Moxie had walked past them. He was now sitting beside Yi Guhan. He almost fell headlong when he heard these words. There's no sign of success yet. So, why are these two women talking like that? I still don't have any intention to look for a wife. Yet these two women are in a rush to marry me. I have no plans in this regard yet. Jun Moxie's expression became indifferent as he started to pour pure aura into Yi Guhan. He then spoke coldly. Miss Sun. Sun Xiaomei apologized in a low voice. You needn't say anything. I know what you're about to say. I won't do it again. I'm sorry. You are Fatty's fiancé and also this little girl's sister. So I'm dropping it for now. But if you ever do it again, I will kill you. What I loathe the most is betrayal. Jun Moxie raised his eyelids. A strong murderous intention flashed in his eyes. He then exuded a strong murderous aura. And the three women became cold all over. Jun Moxie's words reeked of murderous intentions. No one would ever suspect the seriousness of his threat. They wouldn't dare to provoke him since they knew that he would carry out his threat. Sun Xiaomei was silent. She knew that Jun Moxie wasn't joking. Jun Moxie and Jun Wuyi were talking without restraint. In fact, he didn't refrain from speaking his mind in front of debauchee either. This shows that he considers them to his people. He believes that they wouldn't betray him. If they had divulged his secret to Princess Ling Meng, he would have considered it to be a mistake, but never a betrayal. This fact won't change regardless of circumstances or reasoning. Have I always turned a blind eye towards Jun Moxie's true behavior? This youngster's nature is of the type. Obey me. You will die if you don't. It is a tyrant's disposition. Suddenly, Sun Xiaomei started to tremble. She had been very frightened by the words he had spoken to her. Are you that kind of a man, Jun Moxie? Princess Ling Meng was shocked. She looked at Jun Moxie with her eyes wide open. Since when did Jun Moxie have such an imposing personality? Has he changed? Is that the reason why debauchee fell madly in love with him? Princess Ling Meng wasn't sure. She slowly walked over to Yi Guhan. She leaned to look at Yi Guhan's thin and deathly pale face. The princess grieved in her heart at that sight, but hid her tears. Xiao Yi. Jun Moxie closed his eyes as he exerted his entire strength to transfer the aura. What? Debauchee's mood was quite cheerful now. Her mood had a tendency to change very quickly. She had already dried her tears, and was feeling embarrassed about her earlier tantrum. She jumped up when she heard Jun Moxie call her name. Go to third uncle and ask him to send someone to the aristocratic hall. Ask him to have these medical ingredients brought back. Jun Moxie listed the names of the herbs without any hesitation. The earlier I have them, the more useful they will be. Debauchee nodded and then disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Princess Ling Meng moved closer to Jun Moxie. She had never been this close to him before. She observed him as he sat there with his eyes closed and transferred the aura into Yi Guhan. His face didn't look cold or greedy, but it seemed as if he despised all creation under the heavens. She couldn't help but feel moved inside. Then, she felt a faint yet familiar sensation in her heart. It's a very familiar feeling and a very safe one. This incomparable warmth and comfort, where have I felt like this before? Why do I feel this warmth? Princess Ling Meng frowned as she pondered hard. Suddenly, a light flashed in her mind. This feeling, why is it so familiar? Princess Ling Meng couldn't help but inch closer to Jun Moxie. And the closer she got to him, the stronger that feeling became. This slowly reminded her of something, though she couldn't make out what it was. She sat aside, but didn't utter a single word as she thought hard. Sun Xiaomei was sitting beside her with a somewhat vexed expression on her face. Sister Xiaomei, why are you at the Jun family's residence? Princess Ling Meng was sitting idly. Hence, she suddenly recalled this matter and could not help but ask. The princess's mind was still haunting her decision of making that blood oath. Little White led Jun Moxie and Jun Wuyi to us after you were captured. Sun Xiaomei said plainly. The third master of the Jun family brought Uncle Yi here. And Jun Moxie set out to search for you. What? Jun Moxie went alone to look for me? Princess Ling Meng forgot her manners and asked in a loud voice. She jumped onto her legs as a shock spread across her face. She had been trying hard to solve that puzzle. However, It suddenly seemed as if the dark clouds in her mind had been split by a ray of sunshine. Everything suddenly seemed very bright. The mysterious master had carried her as they had escaped from the cave. In fact, that mysterious expert with the throwing knives had always protected her. And what she felt in that man's arms was just like what she had just felt near Jun Moxie's body. Is it possible that? But how's this possible? Princess Ling Meng shook her head vigorously to rid herself of that ridiculous thought. However, those two figures gradually began to become one in her mind. She recalled that Jun Moxie had been nearby at the time of the previous attempt on her life. He had then suddenly disappeared. Could he be him? Princess Ling Meng's heart began to beat wildly. She looked at Jun Moxie in amazement. Her heart suddenly felt an unprecedented feeling. He is quite handsome. Her face suddenly turned red. Dugu Xiaoyi came back, skipping, after she had finished her task. The little girl's heart had recovered, and she was in high spirits. He called me Xiaoyi this time. It was so nice to hear. I hope he calls me that many times again in the future. He. Little sister Xiaoyi. Princess Ling Meng tried hard to restrain her emotions. The tone of her voice was very plain as she asked. I heard that young Master Jun had crafted a jewel-studded knife for you. Is that right? I remember it had a pleasant name the last time you showed it to me. The first pocket knife of Tianxiang. Could you show it to me again? You treated it with disdain the last time I tried to show it to you. But now you wish to take another look at it. Okay then. I'll show it to you, Dugu Xiaoyi mumbled. She then delved into her sleeve and drew out a slender knife. Jun Moxie nearly fainted after he accidentally saw this spectacle. Dugu Xiaoyi. I gave you that knife so you could cut people apart. It's not to be used as an armband. What a waste. Jun Moxie howled angrily. And he was very serious. This little girl had tied the knife to her arm. This meant that it would take her some time to draw it out if need be. What's the difference between it and an armband? The battle will be over by the time she draws the knife to confront an enemy. So what's the use of it? Dugu Xiaoyi's face turned red. She whined for a while out of embarrassment. Then, she replied, This, you gave me, as a token of faith. I'll use it if need be. Why are you getting mad at me? She lowered her pretty face as she spoke. The little girl rubbed the lower hem of her gown out of embarrassment as she whined like a mosquito. She then asked, My jade pendant, you still wear it? Princess Ling Meng's blood oath hadn't come from her heart. Yet, the princess was still her biggest threat in Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes. Therefore, she added the two words, token and faith, in spite of the embarrassment when Jun Moxie asked her about the knife. The idea was to send the message that, whether you like it or not, I'm ahead of you. We've already exchanged tokens of faith. We may be good sisters, but I won't hold back. I, Dugu Xiaoyi, will fight for my love till the end. And I too shall take a blood oath if you provoke me. You may not have done it voluntarily, but I will. Then we'll see who is afraid of whom. The jade pendant? Token of faith? Jun Moxie stared blankly. He didn't know where this was coming from. As for that piece of jade he had received from her, I had kept it somewhere, though I don't remember where I kept it. Princess Ling Meng didn't pay attention to Dugu Xiaoyi's words. Instead, her hands trembled slightly. Her eyes shone with pleasant surprise as she looked at the blade. She then saw that strange light reflecting off of the gem on the handle. It captivated her. The weapon was definitive. The handle of this knife, and the throwing knives were clearly made by the hands of the same man. Whether it was the forging process, the craftsmanship, the decorative design, or even the casting method of the blade, it was all ingenious and original, along with the acute tip of the knife. This indicated towards one clear and undeniable fact. The blade was easy to hold. It was delicate, small, and exquisite. It was suited for slashing as well as stabbing. Moreover, it wouldn't injure the hand of the wielder. The point of the knife, its edge, its spine, its hilt, each and every part of the blade, including its curved arch, had been thoroughly tempered and exquisitely evened. Moreover, the handle and the blade had been made without a cast. It was obvious that someone had spent a lot of time and effort into forging that knife. In addition, the handle was somewhat short. It was obvious that this knife's handle had been specifically intended for a woman's hand. In fact, it was probably intended as such from the time of the collection of raw materials. The handle glittered. Its curving lines flickered like the stars in the night sky. It seemed as if the Milky Way itself had fallen from the sky. The entire blade flowed like a river of light. The princess suddenly felt very jealous as she looked at the blade. He is nice to her, very nice. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 270. Reprimanded. It's a good blade. Princess Ling Meng looked at it with envy. She seemed reluctant to part with it. She had recognized her mystery man in her mind by then. However, she wasn't ready to divulge this matter to anyone. She felt that Jun Moxie plays the debauchee and flaunts his immoral behavior everywhere. Isn't that a means to conceal his real self? He can perform amazing deeds. Deeds that require bravery, chivalry, and courage. His earth-shaking medical knowledge could create uproar in the entire capital. He should have been standing at the summit of this world. He could have enjoyed everyone's admiration, the entire younger generation's devotion. However, he has chosen dirt upon himself for his family's sake. So, what he said before is true. His heart actually didn't lay in wait for me. He and I aren't suited to be a match. However, he in no way unworthy of me, it is I who is undeserving of him. His life must have been full of bitter hardships. Someone capable of such great feats should be a proud and noble youngster. Yet, he has no choice but to suffer everyone's condescending stares and taunts. But he continues to display an extremely nasty personality in public. He can't showcase his achievements. This must be a great torment for him. This requires a very far-sighted vision. How broad-minded, calm and talented does one have to be to face this? Who doesn't want to be desired? Who doesn't wish to be worshipped by hordes of people? Who doesn't wish to stand at the top? However, Jun Moxie had no choice but to suffer the world's humiliation due to his family's circumstances. Princess Ling Meng suddenly felt her heart grieve. He's about the same age as me, but he has experienced a great many things than I have. Moreover, he never wants his name to be credited for the good deeds he does. He never asks repayment for what he does. In fact, he would rather suffer the scorn of the people he saves. How can someone like Li Yuran even compare to such a man? Suddenly, the image of Jun Moxie changed from a scoundrel who wouldn't shrink away from any crime to a lofty individual bathed in bright rays of light in the princess's mind. It was similar to a promotion from the bottom of 18th layer of hell to the 33rd level of heaven. And that too in an instant. Princess Ling Meng suddenly felt that her blood oath wasn't unacceptable anymore. In fact, there was a faint feeling of delight in her heart. It was a pity that the young Master Jun wasn't aware of these feelings. Otherwise, he would have laughed loudly. What a mental disorder! He would have sighed. Heavens and earth! This princess's imagination is so enriched. She harbors fantasies I can't even dare to fathom. The real Jun Moxie never pretended to be a debauchee and a hoodlum. He was a genuine wastrel. There was no false imaging about him. As for the new young Master Jun, he always went about things his own way. He didn't care about other people's point of view. To summarize this change in the image of Jun Moxie from a good-for-nothing debauchee to a tall and lofty person in the pure and innocent head of Princess Ling Meng. Well, it was a complete and beautiful misunderstanding. Debauchee saw the spellbound manner in which the princess had held that knife. It seemed like the princess liked it too much to let it go. The little girl's heart tensed at this. She then snorted. "You don't consider your sister's feelings. I will never show you this knife again." She seethed with anger and pursed her lips. She then said, "I presume Sister Meng has seen enough. It is just a knife. It's nothing that rare." She then reached out and grabbed the knife. Debauchee then proudly narrowed her eyes and smiled. "This knife isn't very rare, but my brother Moxie said that this knife is unique and unmatched whether in quality or style." Unique? Not really, right? Princess Ling Meng didn't know why she felt so uncomfortable upon seeing Debauchee displeased. She couldn't help herself to speak in a ridiculing manner. "I have several knives that resemble this one. They are just smaller in size." "You have several such knives?" "I don't believe you. That big villain said that he'd get this jewel-studded knife made for me. Especially for me." Debauchee cried out. Her big eyes were opened in circular shapes. "How is that possible? How is that impossible? Why can't there be several such knives?" Princess Ling Meng smiled mysteriously. "Would you like to spare some time to see them?" Princess Ling Meng couldn't help but satisfy her desire to satiate her ego. She was aware that the throwing knives she possessed had been crafted by the young Master Jun had. However, she had gotten them purely by chance. They hadn't been given to her as a gift, let alone specially made for her. In fact, she knew that there were probably several like the ones she possessed. And she was aware that she couldn't tail the knife out right now since Jun Moxie was nearby. She knew that he wasn't interested in seeing his tokens of faith. She could incur his displeasure if she showed off those knives. But that was secondary. How could she afford to lose face in front of her sisters? "We surely have time to examine elder sister Ling Meng's treasures." Debauchee smiled as a sharp light flashed in her eyes. Princess Ling Meng also had a smile across her face. These sisters were smiling like flowers, but one could feel a strong hostility between them. This confrontation had already surpassed the category of young adolescent women. It had reached the category of grown-up women. Women could commit all manner of unscrupulous crimes to defend their position in their love lives. This sisterly feeling could in no way stand in the path of that. Sun Xiaomei had noticed this intense hostility and jealousy between the two women. However, the very clever Sun Xiaomei couldn't help but gape in astonishment. Debauchee's obsession with Jun Moxie is a known fact. So her behavior isn't strange. However, Ling Meng, her attitude regarding the young Master Jun has undergone a sudden and tremendous change. This is completely inexplicable. Princess Ling Meng had taken a blood oath to marry Jun Moxie. However, it was done unwillingly because of the prevailing conditions. Princess Ling Meng never had a favorable impression of Jun Moxie according to Sun Xiaomei's understanding. In fact, the princess detested him. So why have these two sisters become legendary rivals in love so suddenly? Moreover, how's the sense of hostility so strong despite the strong sisterly bond they share? What's the matter? This is confusing. Very confusing. Sun Xiaomei had always considered herself very capable. She could employ her large brain to any situation. But it had short-circuited in this moment. Jun Moxie heaved a long breath. He had finally exhausted himself. He had grabbed Yi Gu Han's hand and had recklessly poured aura into him for such a long time. He had poured out a huge amount of it by now. But the injured Yi Gu Han's condition had stabilized. Yi Gu Han's Xian Qi had been expelled from his body, and it had been replaced by Jun Moxie's powerful heavenly aura in its entirety. Moreover, the broken bones had been carefully enveloped by the young Master Jun's aura. There would be no further problems as long as no one moved his body or messed with his bones. Jun Moxie was very exhausted. He opened his eyes to look at the three girls, and then sighed in a dejected manner. He didn't feel like talking. A single woman was like 1,000 ducks in the eyes of Hitman Jun, long-winded and confused. But he was facing three of them. This was a very terrifying issue. And if there was only one man present among them, the fate of that man would be very, very tragic. How's he? Princess Ling Meng asked as she moved forward. Her expression had a hint of flattery. How's he? Dugu Xiaoyi's head barged in between. The nostrils of her slender nose were flared, while her eyebrows pulsated unceasingly. Jun Moxie could feel her breath. He could even smell her sweet fragrance. Are you exhausted? Sun Xiaomei didn't dare to take the opportunity to join in on the fun. However, she still put in a word after she took a seat. The three women had together inquired of the tired Jun Moxie. He couldn't shout with his mouth, but his eyes certainly filled in its stead. He thought of a few things to say as he opened his eyes. He tried to keep his expression blank as he looked at the three women. It was cold like an ancient block of ice. His cold gaze swept over them, and the three women shivered with nervousness. They felt ashamed for no reason. They felt as if they had done something wrong. Even the little girl was no exception. Women. Ah, women. Jun Moxie's mouth arched downwards. He raised his hands to his temple with effort and started to massage it. His face twitched with irritation. I didn't wish to talk nonsense with you, but now I think it is necessary. Otherwise, you'll burden this young master to death, sooner or later. What? The three women were astounded. They looked at each other for a while. They were at a total loss. Firstly, you made a huge mistake. Jun Moxie pointed his finger at Princess Ling Meng. There was no trace of politeness in his demeanor. Take today's matter as an example. It was unnecessary to sacrifice anything. However, you managed to create this situation from nothing. It's all you're doing. Yi Gu Han shouldn't have sustained such injuries. He could have easily retreated with light injuries. But things have turned out in this manner because of your ignorance. Your Uncle Yi made such a huge sacrifice for you. And now you've made a blood oath for his doctor. It is very touching. I feel very bad for Yi Gu Han. His situation is extremely tragic. And it was all for something so worthless. It's too sad. I got to know about this matter from your sisters. Princess Ling Meng, you're at the gold Xian level. You may seem like a very strong expert to an average person. However, you can't fight against such powerful assassins. But Yi Gu Han had already blocked the enemies. So couldn't you have your skills to escape? Moreover, this incident happened within the imperial capital. So why didn't you run to each and every major family that resided nearby? Did you attach that much importance to your tears? Those unreal things have done so much harm to Yi Gu Han. The only thing you can do when such an incident occurs, in fact, the only thing which you should do is seize the opportunity and escape. The farther you would have run, and the faster you would have run, the more Yi Gu Han would have been able to relax. You shouldn't have been concerned about Yi Gu Han's safety, or thought that you're abandoning him. You should have only thought of escaping yourself. You should have thought of your own safety, since Yi Gu Han was fighting for that reason alone. Yi Gu Han would have thought about retreating once you were safe. He may not have been able to retreat wholly uninjured, but it wouldn't have led to something like this. But did you do that? No. You didn't. You just looked back until Yi Gu Han had been seriously injured to the point of dying. In fact, you hadn't even run 300 meters. And you wouldn't have covered that distance if it weren't for Xiao Yi and Sun Xiao Mei pulling at you. Do you have curd inside your head? What were you thinking? Jun Moxie reprimanded the princess, impolitely and ruthlessly. Princess Ling Meng's eyes had become red, and she was about to cry. Don't cry. I will throw you and your Uncle Yi out if I see another tear fall from your eyes today. I never asked you take that bullshit blood oath. What a stupid thing to do. As if tears are going to be useful to your Uncle Yi. Your Uncle Yi is dying because of your wretched tears. But will it be useful for me against the enemy? Crying is worth a fart. Can you do anything else besides crying? You try to cry again, and see what happens. Jun Moxie roared ferociously. This story will be continued to chapter 271. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.